Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the day two of India Heat Summit hosted by Climate Trends in association with National Disaster Management Authority and National Human Rights Commission. We are very grateful to see you for an engaged and thoughtful audience back with us today. It's day one. It was all about laying foundation on science, public health, infrastructure, and industry. Today, we turn to systems that support long-term resilience and adaptation, food, finance, and governance. To begin with, I would like to invite Gunjan Jain, Assistant Director at Climate Trends, to share a quick recap of key highlights from yesterday's session.
Thank you, Kartiki, and thank you everyone for being here this morning. I know that yesterday was quite action-packed and we had a much fuller room, but good to see whoever you could make it, and we are hoping more people will be joining in as the day progresses. We are here today to discuss a very critical issue which is affecting each one of us, every system, ecosystem, and region that we can imagine in the country. This is an event that we started organizing during the heat wave of 2022, and we recognize that heat is the most it needs that kind of focus because it is so pervasive. Somebody yesterday kind of used a very useful term for it called the angry weather, which is largely the unpredictable patterns that we are seeing in our weather systems, in our seasonal trends. And that's largely due to the kind of increasing footprint of climate change and emissions induced higher temperatures that are prevailing across the world. If we look at what happens in the higher temperatures during March and April, I think these are something which have not happened earlier. According to somebody, Dr. Achyuta Rao yesterday, 1 in 3,000 years would possibly see these kind of abnormal temperatures in what was traditionally called the spring season. Currently, what is happening in extreme temperatures during these months is possibly once in 300 years. Still not such a regular event. But as temperatures are rising and global average reaches possibly 2 degrees in what is possibly the projection, looking at how mitigation is happening, this could be a 1 in 5 years incidence. And I think the biggest risk is that it is tough to predict the scale, the increase of this and how we are preparing for it. Some important things which both the National Human Rights Commission and the National Disaster Management Agency, who are also our partners on this event, raised. And I think it's critical and it's good to heartening to know that NHRC is talking about the need for scaling up heat action plans across at district level to avoid any kind of gaps in that kind of planning, because heat now is affecting country across. It's not just something which we are feeling in the plains and low-lying areas, but it is something which is being experienced in the coastal regions where humidity is extremely high, because every 1 degree of higher atmospheric temperature can has more than 7% capacity to absorb moisture. And the Himalayan region, where apparently if the global average is reaching 1.5 degree, which means that the Himalayan region would actually be touching 2.2 degrees, because the heat absorbed in the glacial ice retains for much longer and is affecting that region more severely. And it's one of the regions which is of course, like we say, the most vulnerable are actually not the people who are responsible for what is happening. So I think that region also pretty much we can say. Just recently, if those of you who came across that story, there was a glacier in the Himalayas where scientists from ISIMOD and other regions who went and who did a funeral tribute for it, because that glacier has gone missing. And this is becoming a trend across the world as more and more ice loss we are seeing, which of course is all interlinked in how we are seeing our water security, how we are seeing hydrological patterns shifting, and how, while right now we are seeing extreme flood situations like what happened in Pakistan in 23, or what we see avalanches happening in various parts of India, be it Sikkim, be it Chamoli. But maybe in 20, 30 years, once this ice is melted away, there is the direst situation where we might be very short on water. So these are all the situations where we are existing right now. And I think yesterday it was really nice to hear that um, one of the very critical things which I think Dr. Vatsa from NDMA raised, that uh, we need more capacity to build these heat action plans. It's something which the officials at the ground level, at district level, at city level are not equipped to do. They need more expertise. They need more academic and research organizations to come in and input into that. And I think there is what he said, that there is a need for a nodal agency. What Soumya Swaminathan said, that for health, we need another nodal agency, which can possibly be bringing together the ministries of health, environment, and earth sciences. And that's where the conversations are now moving, that it isn't something which can be looked at in silos. Heat is something which is cutting across every issue, be it the Jal Shakti mission, or be it looking at agriculture, looking at how the energy systems are interacting, or how the industry is getting affected, labor productivity is getting affected. We've talked about all of this yesterday, and we'll be talking a lot more about this today. But that also means that we need these conversations to break out of silos. And I think these 2 days, that what we have done is a small effort towards that objective, that we bring together the right stakeholders from across these sectors, people who are representing these departments in the government, people who are practitioners and representing industry, and of course the right academic and research experts who can guide us on what possible solutions these are. This is not just a conversation to discuss the gloom and doom on what is happening, but potentially what are the solutions we need to be looking at. And our effort will be that we harness whatever comes out of this 1.5 days, and we compile it into something which can be a stepping stone towards further solutions across some of these sectors, and present them to the right ministries. I think one of the interesting things that was said about, if those of you remember in 2022, some of the top headlines were not just about the extreme heat wave that we had seen for the first time after 1901, but also how India faced one of the most severe energy crises amidst those extreme temperatures. What yesterday, Mr. Alok Kumar, who's the former secretary for the Ministry of Power, said that India has enough energy capacity being produced. The issue is about how the grid is able to absorb it. And I think that's where the solutions rely, that we need more storage to be able to absorb and act during non-sunlight hours. And we need an upgraded power grid. How the insurance sector feels that in the next 10 years we'll become uninsurable, which means that it is becoming more and more unpredictable to be able to predict the scale of disaster, and also how the cooling technologies now, how they would be affected in the coming decades once temperatures are rising beyond the normal threshold, which they already have, and how those would be effective or not effective. These are technologies which are yet to be tested in times which are not going to get any cooler. There isn't going to be a cooling phase in our lifetimes, or even in the next few generations' lifetimes. So which means that we'll only be seeing more and more severe, and what is the technology that can really protect us from that kind of stress. But overall, I think just a lot of discussions to kind of capture some of the risks that heat is projecting. And I think that's one of the key things to look at. And of course, what are the possible solutions? Ultimately, I think the buck stops at money, money, money. And somebody yesterday said something very interesting, that climate impacts, we need to make a financial case of how climate impacts, and investing in it makes much more financial sense to investors and to people in the business community, because every percentage saved for them is something which is of importance, and that's That's what matters. Ultimately, if you want to make all these innovations, scale up systems, bring in more adaptation, resilience in the infrastructure that India will be investing in the next decade, that is where a lot of money is also required, and we need the finance to come in. So without further delay, today's session is very critical. We have Professor S.N. Tripathi with us, who will be taking us through what the AI solutions are, what sustainability means. I know we all keep using the word sustainability, but what is actually even sustainability? So he's going to be talking about that. And then, of course, we look at something very, very critical to each one of us, which is food systems. I think it's no big kind of secret that every sector across agriculture is affected, fisheries is affected, but how we even looking at not just production, but also consumption, which can possibly become more adaptable and resilient. And last but not the least, like I said earlier, where the buck stops is the money. So our last and final session today will be about finance. I know Kartiki will do a more formal introduction, but I just wanted to take a second, sir, to invite Professor S.N. Tripathi today. First of all, he's been our mentor and guide since I think I started here since 2016. He's made a special effort leaving an event that his organization at IIT Kanpur was organizing over the last 2 days to show us his support and be here with us today. So we're extremely, extremely grateful to you, sir, for always being here with us and for your support. You have no idea how much that means to us. Thank you for being here. Kartiki, over to you.
Thank you, Gunjan. As Gunjan mentioned, so to set the tone for today's session, we are honored to begin with a special address from a leader in sustainability, science, and technology. Please welcome Professor S.N. Tripathi, Dean of Kotak School of Sustainability at IIT Kanpur. Professor Tripathi has contributed immensely to India's air quality and emissions policy. And today he'll speak about AI-powered tool that can support climate-smart urban planning in rapidly warming India. We welcome you, sir. May I also request Ms. Aarti Khosla, founder and director of Climate Trends, to come on the stage to accompany him, please. Yeah, over to you, sir. Yeah.
Oh, so I have to say next. Okay. Okay, good morning. It's a real pleasure to be here. Thanks to Climate Trend Friends for organizing this very timely, event on very topical issue. I am going to talk about a little bit about how these two kind of extremes, if they overlap, what one could do about it. And the key message is going to be that two kind of interventions can bring resilience, as we all know. One is, of course, one can intervene with the infrastructure, that is the physical infrastructure. And a second resilience or second way of bringing resilience is to provide information in right time, right? That if we can make people aware of issues, make authorities well aware of the issues well in time, then we know that actions follow from there. They will be able to take decisions, and then thereby, then they can start making interventions. So the main focus of this talk is going to be on the second, that how we can make use of data, and thereby we can apply artificial intelligence on that, which can then make everyone who is part of this entire thing take quick decisions in real time, near real time, and thereby can bring these cross-sectoral interventions, which are very important. There will be some focus on cities, because as of now, I am also kind of part of this effort, which is named as Erawat Research Foundation. And that is a special purpose vehicle established by Government of India. Basically is a National Center of Excellence on artificial intelligence for sustainable cities. So thereby, my focus will be a little bit more on sustainable cities. So of course, I'm sure lots of these issues and catastrophic effect of climate change, heat extreme, what we are seeing across the world. But these pictures just exemplify that what's happening, that we all know that climate change is not uniform. When we talk about 1.5 degrees sea rise or 2 degrees sea rise, some places the temperature rise could be as much as 5-6 degrees as we speak. These are some of the examples, as you see, that a polar bear, which is walking on a barren land, because we all know that when the temperature will rise by 3 or 4 degrees, poles will have a temperature increase by up to 10 degrees Celsius. So these are all things what we are seeing. There is another, this very vivid picture of a family of giraffes who were found dead, I think 3 or 4 years back in one of the national parks of Africa, just in the dearth of water. And then, of course, most recently, we know that how fire incidences, their extent, their intensity, and their frequency all are increasing over a period of time. California is the most recent example, which is one of the richest country of the world. And you can see that it got crippled when these kind of fires happen. These fires are not uncommon even in India. So you can see that they can bring you double or triple whammy. That of course, climate change is happening. Fires can be devastating in a way that they bring extra load of pollution, and they of course destroy the entire ecosystem. And that these all events are increasing. I'm sure plenty of talk must have happened in yesterday's part of this event. This is just, I wanted to bring this kind of connection between this large, very, gangetic climate machine, as we can say, and with this anthroposphere where we operate, the human being operate, the governments operate, society operate, institutions operate. And what is the link between that and how we can actually break that link, or something we can do about it so that we can make the world more sustainable. And what you see here on the left, basically all that is green and blue is the biosphere, that is cryosphere, that actually stores all the ice. You have forests, which is all the flora, fauna, and trees are there. You have ocean and everything. And that system is driven by sun, that is a primary source of energy. And then you have occasional source, which also is kind of a forcing on the system, is volcano. And on the right, what you see, everything which is yellow, where we are an actor, right? So we means we are part of society, we are part of nation, we are part of this world. We contribute to knowledge. On the knowledge, we build technology. And those technologies, of course, drive the world as we progress, okay? And what you see that there is another forcing. On the right, what you see, this dark maroon circle, which is the fossil fuel. And that is what brings out this strong linkage between the right-hand side, the anthrosphere, and the left-hand side, which is the whole geosphere. And you see there is a very dark or thick yellow arrow, which shows that all the greenhouse gases which are emitted from this fossil fuel combustion that enters, and thereby that causes all this forcing, right? What we want that over a period of time, we want to cut this link by harvesting, using more renewable, and all those things what is there at our means and what we can do. But this is not easy. Why it's not easy? Because what you see that there are societies, there are people, our own different cultures, we have different beliefs. As we speak, we know many people still don't believe in climate change. Now there's no way that you can do something about it. So thereby, it's a very, very complex kind of interaction between a natural system and a system where the humans, they play a role is happening. What we can do, we can model these systems, right? If we model it, definitely what outcome of these models will be more accurate, more targeted, and one can provide better information in a timely way. That is why I have put a question mark whether these kind of systems be modeled. And there are efforts going on. At the very end, I probably will touch on this issue as I go along. Now, I'm sure that most of the people sitting here are aware of these kind of results, which are already part of very impactful publications. For example, in this case, what you see that this has made its way to IPCC. which just shows that which part of the world are facing the wrath of climate change in a very, very major way, and which are the locations where overlapping climate extremes are happening or will happen. And as you see that as the size of the circles increases, a single location, a single region or country may have a possibility of as many as 13 extreme events happening at the same time, or maybe very close in a small or short time interval. And that is what makes these places, these regions very, very vulnerable. And that's where we have to probably understand. And then on the right, what you see, it also gives you a projection that as we move in time, and as the temperature projections are from 1.5 C to 3.5 C, what would be the nature of the extreme that's going to happen, as you see on this scale? And what it says that if the temperature rise goes beyond 3 or 3.5 degrees C globally, then good part of those, like South Africa or Sub-Saharan Africa, part of, I think, India, etc., can experience as many as 300 plus days, which will have heat extreme. Just imagine now only 50 days or something about that can make our life so miserable. And when these extreme days, the heat stress days goes beyond 200, 250 days, and it starts penetrating into springs or maybe winter, I think that is something going to be kind of a catastrophic thing, really. And here, what it just shows that what kind of overall economic impact these extremes already has and what is going to be in relative and in absolute terms. And we see that India is very prominent here. In absolute terms, if you can see it, that is already shows that about $100 billion are getting lost because of these kind of extremes. And when we talk about heat extremes, I think it's not only heat, there are other things associated with that because of the adverse health and many such things, right? Which just because of that associated leads to these kind of impact, what we are seeing again in a very interesting paper, which was published in Science Advances. Now, as I said that because my interest here is we have started looking into that how we can kind of understand the combined effect or impact of heat and pollution. And thereby it's important that I introduce the pollution also to the audience which is sitting here. This is an interesting paper that gives you that what's the current level of particulate matter pollution across the globe. And again, what you see that this is the result, I think, published in 2022. And maybe the data they have is up to 2021. And you see good part of India is red. And then there is a Middle East. And in fact, large part of Africa is also showing dark red color. Okay, and that shows that, well, these are the places. There is some dark patches over China, and then, of course, in South America. And these are the places what is experiencing very high amount of particulate pollution. So the question is that when you have heat extreme that is happening, at the same time, when pollution extreme is also there, what kind of effect it could have? It would not be a simply additive effect. It would be lot more than when you just add two things together. So it will be more non-linear, just to mention that, okay? And this, of course, gives you an idea that how particulate matter pollution is changing, what's the rate of change. That's again, basically based on all the measured values and then making use of some satellite data. This study has kind of created these results where you see that, again, whereas some part of the world slowly has started showing some changes in the positive direction where pollution is decreasing over a period of time. But whereas still what we see, if our focus here is more on India, you see that still large part of India is seeing steep rise in particulate pollution over last 20 years. That's because this study has focused on 2 decades of data they had. So one thing I just want to say, because it was mentioned that I should discuss a little bit about sustainability. I think it's very important to understand that while we want to intervene with technologies, with data, with AI, this is very important. As I said in the beginning, that there are two kinds of interventions only we can make, broadly speaking. One is in infrastructure, and another using data, helping in decision-making to aid in doing interventions, right? But we must not forget that the large amount of information which has been collected over generations in this country or any other country, and from that, the knowledge which is created and wisdom that has been obtained should not be forgotten. That is very important, that every society, every country has certain amount of wisdom, and that wisdom we must use. And that is what slowly, I think, unfortunately, we are forgetting that. Here is a very, very interesting example that a good book is written by, I believe, this is Michigan State University retired professor emeritus. He compared the history of elephants in some of the Asian countries, right? And this is what is here in front of you, that where India currently has about 37,000 elephants, China has only a couple of hundreds, right? And why? You can see that what are the reasons here, that why elephants survived, they flourished. In fact, they grew in good part of India. Of course, they are more in south part of India, primarily because there was a whole set of system where elephants were part of war, they were part of recreation, they were part of doing festive activities, fair, and many such things, and economic activities, right? And that is what actually resulted into that. That's one message here, that how some of your practices, if they are progressive, can lead to conservation, preservation of not only ecosystem, but of these beautiful elephants which we have today in front of us. There is another example here, just which is again based on the common wisdom we have, is right in the midst of desert in Rajasthan, is an example of Udaipur. Long before when this big canal came into Rajasthan, the people of Udaipur were enjoying abundant water. And this is very well narrated at many places. In medieval India, that kings and other people of Rajasthan were well aware of preserving water, conserving water, doing water harvesting without narrating in so many words. They had built tens of lakes. And as you see, if you go to the beautiful city of Udaipur, you could find still there about half a dozen lakes, which are very much there, thriving, and tens of thousands of wells, which are all connected. And it was so surprising when I was reading this article that during 15th, 16th century, Udaipur was able to do triple cropping. If anybody understands cropping, that you basically grow kharif, that is paddy or dhan, or you then grow rabi crop, which is the wheat. And in between, if you grow some vegetable, it is called triple cropping. You can understand that Udaipur was doing it long before when this big canal that came into Rajasthan, right? And third example is of Kumbh. Why I say that? I touched upon that how you must preserve our ecosystem and our wildlife. Second was about water. And third, this is a great example, and that's a very seminal example, that how large set of people who assembled in a tiny part of a small city like Prayagraj, in 20 square kilometer, the flux of people was 600 million people, whereas Prayagraj population is about 30 lakh, that is 3 million. Still, everyone knows that the city remained clean, particularly the part where this mega fair was held, and there was very little pollution that was thrown into the confluence of that place, Sangam, right? Why? Because they were able to put that kind of a whole machine in place, right? And this has been happening. This is not that this is the first time it has happened. But the issue is that why our cities are still replete with waste everywhere. We are not able to clean. That's one of the major problems our cities are facing. So that is, I think, some of the questions we need to answer here. So now this actually brings me to talk about some of the work which is basically happening as a part of this AI Center for Sustainable Cities, which is led by IIT Kanpur. As you see, some of the leading academic institutions of India, leading industries, and many other are part of this very, very important initiative, which is under Make in India and Make AI for India. And this is being implemented as Airawat Research Foundation, which is a Section 8 company. So what's our key idea here? The key idea, what we realize that cities, which are a very complex super system, is that many a times problems are not be able to solve in real time because of lack of the data that is available to them. And that does not allow them to take decisions in right time, and thereby they cannot really do these cross-sectoral interventions. For example, the problem of urban mobility, or something is being created, some infrastructure is being built. At the same time, somebody is also doing something related to water or wastewater or drainage. So being such a complex system, that is, as I said, that system of systems, what we believe that if we can create a data provenance, many data is available. We want to fetch that data. We call it multimodal data, data from satellite, data from sensor, data from people, data from cell phone, data from government monitors, or create new data. That data can be used to create forecasting systems. Forecasting for what? Forecasting for urban sustainability demand. We demand for mobility, we demand for energy, we demand for clean air, we demand for clean water. So many such demands are. We want for clean roads. All these demands, if it can be forecasted well ahead in time, our city officials will be able to take decisions in timely manner, and that will allow them to take intervention. This is our key premise on which we are working with all our partners. So I will just give you one or two examples what we are trying to do here. And we believe that if this kind of framework is ready for many cities, these are not actual infrastructure except the back end where you have servers and all computers, but otherwise is mostly digital infrastructure. So it's very easy to cross deploy. You can deploy it at a scale. So for example, if something is trained for Delhi, it won't be very difficult to train it for Bangalore or Mumbai with little bit of additional data. Anybody who understands that how AI works, you don't need always data for every place, every location, every weather. You create a model, and then with some additional data, a fraction of the data for which you have already trained the model for one location, one season, or one place, one context, then it can be ported to another city, another place. That's the idea we have, that these digital technologies can be then deployed across the scale in Indian cities, which you know that are going to be 4,000s when the city population is going to increase up to, my feeling is that 600 million by 2035, and by 2047, when we have some laudable goals to become Viksit Bharat and all, that by then, the city dwellers probably will go more than maybe 700 or something millions like that. So thereby, it's very important that we try to provide the services which everyone deserves who are going to live in cities, right? So there are 4-5 major ideas on which we are working on here. One is about monitoring, that's related to air quality or critical infrastructure using again data. Second is urban mobility. We know that our problems, everyone commutes here in Delhi in the evening, you know, the places which should take maximum 20-30 minutes, despite having some multimodal connectivity, metro buses, still it takes 2 times more, or sometimes 3 times, 4 times, depending on the time, weather, etc. of the day. So that's one problem we want to basically kind of cater into. Second is that how we provide that people who are building infrastructure, who are doing some strategic interventions with sufficient information, that is a forecasting for travel demand, etc., so that whatever infrastructure is created is going to be used by people. Because eventually our goal is to serve the people. The people who are living in the cities must feel happy that yes, they have a livable city to live in there. Third is about energy forecasting, be it forecasting of gas, CNG, PNG, or electricity. They are all going to be required to have very accurate models. That's the third problem. There, actually, we are working with some top industries here. Fourth is about governance, that many of the services, what we demand from the city officials, need to be on our palm top. That once we have a cell phone or we have our PC on us or anything, we should be able to log in, and we should be able to put application, and we should be able to track it, and we should be able to get that in time. And it should have a double interface. On the other, you have the city officials who are monitoring that entire application. That is about the governance, just like many things have happened over past few years, as you know, because of a very robust digital infrastructure, we are able to get our passports in time. This is just one example, but we have several other such services related to property taxes, related to buying or selling property, electricity related stuff, or any complaint related to road and all should be able to get it done on a single platform. And finally, we also are working on water related things where we believe that data and data related AI-based interventions can make a huge difference. There is another thing we are also working on, and I thought that I will tell about it, that as a part of Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, they have now entered into the Cities 2.0 phase of their programs, where building on that, some of you know, ICCC, Integrated Cities, what they call center, something ICCC Control Center. They want to create now city-based analytics center and state-based what they call climate data observatory. And we believe that Eravat can contribute majorly into that by making use of some of the strength the consortium has in terms of climate modeling, etc. And we can bring AI into it to create these hyper-local products of temperature, which is very important, as you know, that to create these heat extreme and their forecast at 1 kilometer. Our goal is to create this product at 1 kilometer and they then go beyond that. So once you have these heat stress product, using the temperature and relative humidity forecasts at 1 kilometer, one can also give advisory for health related stuff. And we are also working on giving forecasts related to flood, inundation depth, and many other things. So we hope that that's another thing what we'll try to pursue, and we'll start giving some of these services and products in next 1 or probably 1.5 years. This is related to flood. This is a very interesting solution which is created by one of our partners from IIT Gandhinagar, and it's already, by the way, beautifully working in 3 cities, which is mentioned there, Bhavnagar, Surat, and Kozhikode, where they are able to take what I'm sure yesterday was talked about, the output from these physics-based models, and they then use this model output, which you know that at the best can go to 10 or 6 kilometers. As you try to stretch the resolution, accuracy actually diminishes very fast. So what he has been able to do, Dr. Udit Bhatia, is able to take these physics-informed model output and apply AI on that by using some of the training in these cities. And thereby he's able to provide, first of all, the rainfall, which is a very difficult product to give at a very hyper-local scale. Anybody who follows weather would know that how difficult it is. And then building on that, he can provide you the flood and the inundation depth. These are the 3 critical things if one can get at a hyper-local scale. That is at the scale of ward or sub-ward scale. If you don't get it at that scale, it's not going to be useful. It's not going to be very informative for the people who are going to do something about it or the people who are at the receiving end. So getting accurate information at that scale is only going to make you aware and more resilient. That is one thing what also we are working on. And finally, I'll now touch in the next 2 or 3 minutes, I will wrap up, that how the pollution is going to come into that. So I'll now switch the gears a little bit. Here is the existing network of government monitors that monitor pollution across Bihar to UP, which is about 110. So we have been able to augment this network by adding about 1,380 sensors which monitor particulate matter and some of the weather parameters at a block level. So in this, every block has a sensor which is giving you streaming data. In real time, it is actually giving data with very high frequency. And using such kind of data and then bringing it satellite, and many other ancillary data products, we were able to kind of create at 1.5 square kilometer the exposure level to people. That is what these plots show you for 3 different seasons over entire state of Bihar, that what is the exposure to people at a 0.5 square kilometer. Now, these are again going to be very important, that you want to know that what you are being exposed to, and that also will be only helpful that you are able to give this information at a very hyper local scale. And how we are going to use it, I will touch upon that now. So what we are now working on is to understand that once the heat extreme is there, and how do you define heat extreme? As you probably have been told a lot yesterday, that you look at wet bulb temperature and some other proxy parameters which are very important to understand heat extreme. These data are available from different sources. And then you also look at PM 2.5 and you're trying to create a synthesized product, okay? And then you try to understand that what is the causality? What is causing it, okay? That's where we are trying to probe it a little more. But I can just give you a very preliminary result that over Delhi, because we already have 40 government monitors over Delhi, and we have sufficient information about this wet bulb temperature, which is important proxy, as I said, is for heat extreme. And on the left bottom, you see there is a small matrix which shows on one axis, basically if it's very high temperature, wet bulb temperature, on another axis, it is more PM 2.5. And it's become very, very reddish or maroon. That means actually it is hitting very high on the both fronts. And what you see over Delhi, that what are those very dark colored spots? Those are the places where certainly people who will be who are living, and I think data is for 2023 or 2024, they must have been at a very, I would say, at a risk and vulnerable because of having both these onslaughts of very high particulate matter, that is very high pollution, and high wet bulb temperature. And that's how you see the two real extremes are overlapping at a place. And that's where we need to have better forecast of these extremes, overlapping extremes at a more hyper local level, okay? Finally, I'll just tell you that we are also able to provide some very good forecast for energy. This is just to tell you that what CO is doing, that in this case, this is for Adani Electricity Mumbai Limited. They want to supply the electricity to at the sub power station level, block level. And their goal is to have this thing forecasted with 3% of accuracy, right? And we were able to kind of match that, and just want to give you one example here. Finally, I will just leave at this slide that, as I said in the beginning, when I showed that how sustainability can be understood by bringing the perspective with the geosphere and the anthrosphere. And I said whether these kind of very two complex systems be modeled. And there I tell you that a lot of work is already happening in that direction. This is not something which is totally kind of an idea which has not taken off. And hopefully the people who are there, even as a part of our COE, other people in India and at Kotaki school, we should have some headway in that direction. Thank you. I'm sure I've taken much time, but
No, sir. No.
okay.
Are we on time?
We can.
Thanks very much, Prof. I think just listening to you is such a pleasure, and sitting in that class is such so much knowledge gets transferred that I can only thank you for this, and thanks for the wonderful lecture and so many interactions that you showed in terms of civilizational legacy, ecology, all kinds of things. And I was fascinated when you talked about China. I was reading somewhere that they also realized some time back that they really don't need sparrows, so they killed sparrows. Then they realized that they need sparrows, So they imported some 2 lakh sparrows from Russia. So they had to be Russian sparrows. I'm not getting there. But you see, that is how our civilizational legacy is about preservation and conservation and living within our means, etc., etc. I don't want to take a very long time, but because the lecture was so good, I wanted to open it up and see if there are any hands, if there is any observation, anyone has any questions. If not, then I have one, but wanted to open the floor. And Archana?
So particularly in the case of this product, Flood AI, which is developed by Dr. Udit Bhatia, fantastic product actually of a, I would say, international class and no match in terms of anything close to in India. He takes output from global model. That's the way it is. These products are taken because these are forecasts. These are not measurement. And then he uses them as a boundary condition to run regional models. So from like half a degree, that is 50 square kilometer, he brings it down. That's called downscaling to 10 square kilometer. That probably yesterday IMD people and they all talked about. And then from 10, the actual game begins. That as you try to make it even more fine-grained prediction, that accuracy just start rising. So he then, what he does that he applies AI model from there. And then he uses AI model, but trains them also with the measurements. So he had some very unique sensors. So in all, I believe that one after another in these 3 cities, he has deployed these network of sensors, which I believe measures all the rainfall and inundation depth, etc., to train his model. And then he start training because that final leg of those training requires super accurate data, and there he cannot rely on other because the model data are universally available and there are good models from India and from other agencies from across the globe. That particularly is part of this what you are asking. Any other place if you want to do, because I said that the output from regional and global models are generally available. That for training of AI model, he needs to put those arrays of sensor and generate data, because he is not able to train his model for that particular location, then his model will not achieve the accuracy which he wants to get to have accurate prediction at 1 square kilometer or 500 square meter or at a city block level.
One question, and then I will pose one brief one, and then we will have to draw this to a close. But
hello, sir. You're putting a lot of sensors for the model that is being put. Now, what is the kind of resolution at which these sensors need to be put? So let's say at every 500 square meter area or 1 square kilometer area, what it is. And are we then using low-cost sensors or expensive ones to make sure that kind of correlation can be developed so that AI models can be trained in a better way? The main context behind this question is that this is being done now for UP and Bihar that you were showing, at least for air quality. If that needs to be done across India as well, what is the quantum of such sensors required so that we can have that granularity of data?
So your question is in the context of air quality sensors, right? Not the flood, correct? Air quality. Yeah, for air quality, as of now, the sensors we have put, for example, 540 in Bihar. So Bihar had about 35 monitors when we had started putting these sensors, and it is 35 still. So basically there was one monitor in every 3,000 square kilometer. Bihar has an area of about 150,000 square kilometers, something like that. So 3,000, right? Now, by putting 500 plus sensors, we could bring the resolution to one data in every 200 square kilometer, right? That's the kind of area of a block, roughly speaking. But then if you have already improved the resolution of data, well, the density of data, then you can start leveraging other data sets which are available, like satellite and many other things. Satellite images are there these days, which can provide you information at about few tens of meters easily, right? Like these dope satellites, which are, like Elon Musk and many other, they have these constellation of satellites which are flying all the time and giving you information at every part of the world at least once daily, right? So that is the idea we have here. Now, coming back to the accuracy of these sensors can be made highly accurate by one developing some correlation, as you said, at the your site where you are kind of preparing before the deployment. So let's call it pre-deployment phase. And then by co-locating some sensors with the government monitors. So these two kind of, whatever you develop, one, the pre-deployment, and one during deployment, these correlations, which is called calibration factor actually, should be able to give you reasonably accurate data, what is required as of now, because as of now, the air quality, what we have in this country, really do not require any sensor more precise than that, right? Rather, we need to scale up the monitoring. That is the goal, what we should have now. And third, what you said, that number of sensor, I believe that you need certainly tens of thousands across the country, more than that. That's how we can only understand that what's happening at a ward level. Like look at that in Delhi. You have 40 monitor, but still you don't understand in one ward what's happening, right? Because still you are only getting one data in every 30, 40 square kilometer. That's not sufficient. So maybe only to give you context of Delhi, that we need at least 1,000 sensors. You have a lot better information. So because we talked about China just now, so they already have about 50,000 plus sensors. Although they already have about triple in size to our these regulatory grade monitoring network. We have about 400-500. I think they have roughly about 1,600 or 2,000. But they have augmented it with additional 50,000 surpluses. Only in Beijing, I believe they have 2,000 sensors. So that is how they are able to train their model and provide many, many information. And I tell you what, that these data can also feed into your weather and climate modeling framework, because these are not two very different things. They actually feed into each other, right?
Sir, one last question. Even yesterday, IMD was here, NDMA was here. Everybody is talking about data, about new systems, new models. My question is, how, in your view, where are the quick opportunities for high-grade science to link to policy? You spoke about the MOA project. We've all gone through the MOEFCC, NCAP. There is something else that's happening with Ministry of Earth Sciences. Ministry of Power looks at energy demand and will make sure that coal import continues throughout the year. So in your view, especially because you have this helicopter view of how things are coming together, what are some of the big opportunities in terms of how we also make data and policy systems speak to each other fast?
Well, I mean, definitely the building blocks have been put in place by MOEs, correct? They are saying, well, they have Earth model. Now beyond Earth, now they say that the Bharat model has come, right? Which is giving you a forecast at 6 kilometers. We will come to know that how accurate it is in coming period. But I think that's a good starting point. What we need to do is that we need to probably collaborate more, correct? That the people who are working in the area of AI, be it IITs or ISC or all top other universities or other people who are active in the private ecosystem, we just need to kind of work together so that there is a seamless exchange of ideas and data. right? Because they actually have access to large data, be it weather output, weather model output, or they also have at their disposal, most of the observational data, right? From the ground-based observatory or the balloon sound. And you know that AI works better if you have lots of data. So I think it only would augur well to our effort in providing this square kilometer or sub-square kilometer, these kind of products, what I talked about, that we work closely with them. And I see that there is no competition here, honestly, because many times that is the threat everyone sees, that they are the primary agency to provide the forecast, right? But improving that using AI and mainly for cities is mandate given to other people, correct? So I think that AI and the data engineers can and should work with them, and they should, I think, receive it with the open arms to take it forward.
Thanks, sir. Very wise and very nicely put. IMD will create the base. Others can come and augment. In the end, there is a partnerships that is needed by ministries, by high-grade institutions, scholars, as well as people. Thanks so much, sir, once again for delivering the lecture this
Thank you,
morning.
Aarti. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. May I now request Aarti to present a small memento to Tripathi, sir? We would now quickly move into one of the most insightful panel of the day, adapting to temperature variability challenges for India's food systems. Moderating this panel is Ms. Gunjan Jain, Assistant Director at Climate Trends, and joining her for this important conversation is Dr. Raman Janelilu, GV, Director of Center for Sustainable Agriculture. He has championed ecological farming, community institutions, and policy reform for over 2 decades. Ms. Megha Desai, Senior Coordinator at SEWA, working at the front line with informal women workers to build heat and livelihood resilience in India's most climate-affected district. Joining us online is Ms. Akshata Sharma, Climate Change Adaptation Officer at the Asian Development Bank, who comes with expertise in nature-based livelihoods, adaptation finance, and ecosystem solutions across Asia. Also joining us virtually, Dr. Divya Karnad, founder of In Season, a marine ecologist who works on sustainable fisheries, climate justice, and community-led conservation in India's coastal belts. With that, I now hand over to Gunjan. Gunjan, please.
Thank you so much, Kartiki, and thank you to our very esteemed panel who's joined us, Professor Ramu, who's here from Hyderabad, and Megha Ben and Meena Ben here have come from Ahmedabad, and we have Akshata and Divya joining us virtually. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time, and to all our esteemed participants here. This is a very critical discussion, like Kartiki said, because I think it's everybody understands that heat is affecting our food systems, agriculture, production, be it vegetables, cereals, major crops, or horticulture. But it is also affecting the ocean economy and how the seafood is getting affected, how the fishery system is getting affected. And what we are going to be discussing today is not just about how production will be affected, but how consumption can also be addressed in terms of adaptation and needs to be looked at, because ultimately this is the reality in which we are living. But without further ado, we have Dr. Ramu here with us, and I'm a huge fan. So you have a presentation. Maybe I could request you to start with that, and we can go into discussion then. Thank you, sir.
Good morning. Yeah. I work with Center for Sustainable Agriculture for over 20 years. We are working across the country with small and marginal farmers and trying to address the crisis which farming is going through. And to put in a perspective and a context, I would say Indian agriculture was passing through a deep economic crisis, farmers level. They're spending more and getting less. So that's the economic crisis where farmers are ending up indebtedness. And I still remember when I was studying in college in in college, I read a report by Royal Commission on Agriculture, which was published in 1928, which said Indian farmer is born in debt, lives in debt, and dies in debt. And 100 years later, I don't think situation has changed. It has only worsened. Added to the economic crisis, we also got into a kind of natural resource degradation. Your soils, water depleted, and then the whole loss happened. On the top of that, we are now talking about climate change. I think when we talk about the crisis, we need to look at all these things together, because at a farmer's level or a food systems level, all these exist together. So that's the context I would like to say, what is happening and then how we adapt to that. Next, please. Yeah, sorry. So very important when we talk about the climate risk, what we need to look at, the risk is one part of it, but the risk is also compounded by the vulnerability, the socio-economic conditions of the people, and then the natural resource situation. These two are very, very important we need to look at, because the impact is not same on everyone. Impact is not same in every area. These two vary significantly. Also, our interventions can actually accelerate the problem or reduce the problem. So I'll take few examples and explain what is actually happening in the country and then how this can be addressed. Also, when we talk about solutions doesn't lie only at the farmers level, it lies at the societal level. What government does, or what we all do as a consumers, because all of this interaction is what the problem we are seeing it. In short run, if we are looking at adaptation, but long run, we also need to look at the mitigation part. But today, large part of the focus is on mitigation, not so much on the adaptation, because the immediate problems we need to look at. Also, in terms of systems we are trying to build, we need to focus on building resilience. So how farmers' production systems and then their livelihoods can be built to actually last for long, and then their own resources can last for long. These three interactions is something which we need to look for. Also, I think a couple of slides got missed. Sorry. So first, I would talk about the problem which the soils are facing in this country. Sorry, that slide got missed. The soil formation, normally the top soil formation, if you look at, it takes nearly, to farm 1 inch of the soil, it takes nearly about 500 years in the normal course. But if you are moving towards better management practices in terms of organic natural farming, it can be done in much faster way. But in this 500 years, the 1 inch of soil which is formed, it will be lost in less than a year today, because of the bad agriculture practices. The top soil, we are losing at a much faster rate. So the average calculated shows that in India, we are losing nearly 16 tons of soil every year. While the formation, in the natural course, the soil formation is just about 1.5 tons. So the soil formed in 10 years, we are losing in 1 year. And that's what is flooding, that's what is getting into the reservoirs, and then the dams are getting filled with the silt, lakes are getting filled with the silt. That's all what is happening. So the soil fertility is going down. Then what is the result of that? I think that is the important thing we need to look at. As the soil fertility is going down, the productivity is going down. So to get the same level of yield, you have to apply more and more chemical fertilizer. Say in 1970s, every kg of chemical fertilizer applied used to give us nearly about 13.4 kg of yield. And today it is just about 2 kg. So you have to nearly increase your input by 5-6 times. And every 100 kg of urea which you are applying gives around 1.2 kg of nitrous oxide. And that 1.2 kg of nitrous oxide is equal to nearly 300 kgs of carbon equivalent. So imagine the impact of few billion tons of chemical fertilizer used in this country, and whose use efficiency is less than 15%. So 85% goes into air and water, and your water is, you can't drink your water, so you need an RO plant in every house, even in the rural areas, and rest of it goes into the air, causes the whole pollution. So if you look at the GHG emissions from agriculture, methane and nitrous oxide, these are the two major things, and both are highly subsidized by government interventions. So chemical fertilizer, which is subsidized by over 95%. So every kg is subsidized. Every kg of fertilizer sold in this country is subsidized, and every quintal there is a 47,000 rupees subsidy, 47,000 rupees. And alternative, farmers have to do on their own, on organic farming, they have to do on their own. So the interventions from the government is actually accelerating bad practices, and that's what is leading to the whole crisis. This is the first important thing we need to understand. So soil degradation is increasing because of the way we manage the soil. Every time you plow the soil, topsoil is lost. And just to give you an example, all of you might have seen the rice fields, the rice and Dr. Tripathi mentioned about Udaipur thing. No? Very interesting case. Traditionally, Indian lakes were water reservoirs. Traditionally, rice fields were also water reservoirs. You put water into the rice fields, water slowly infiltrates, it fills up your groundwaters, and then you use the open wells to get the water. After 70s, we got into a new way of doing agriculture. In the name of Green Revolution, we started puddling the soils. Puddling is basically use the cage wheels to make the soil very powdery so that it becomes a layer, water won't infiltrate. So you created an artificial hard pan at the bottom of the farm. That is because you are using that more and more water to grow, to manage the weeds. To reduce the water infiltration, we made the hard pan. But it also reduced the infiltration. And water evaporates. So to fill it up, you started pumping out. So a system of rice in this country traditionally used to be a water harvesting structure. From there, we moved to a system where you pump out water and then fill the rice fields. So this shift created the huge problem. Every kg of rice consumes nearly 5,000 liters of water, a tanker of water. So today, if morning you had idli, and then afternoon if you had going to eat biryani, and then evening if you are going to eat something else, one day a family of 5 is eating 1 kg of rice, which also means a 5,000 liters of water. 5,000 liters of water. An acre of rice consumes nearly about 60 lakh liters of water, which is 1,000 families' annual water consumption. So why I'm saying this is, today, if you are growing rice, you get huge support from the government. On every kg of rice, there is 16 rupees subsidy, power and fertilizer. On purchase, government buys everything and distributes. So on that, there's a 32 rupees subsidy. If you're not growing rice, if you're growing millets, pulses, oil seeds, you have to put your own money, and no one procures, so you have to battle with the markets. So the rice area in this country is increasing significantly. Can you imagine a state like Telangana? The area under rice has increased by over 250% in the last 10 years. This is because government of Telangana thought growing rice is a development. So after the state formation, we started growing rice. Story won't end up there. So we started growing rice, and a huge dam was built to supply water. And Telangana being on a plateau, you cannot have a gravity dam. So they have built a lift irrigation dam. So you need power to lift water and then pour it there. And the power bill is around 12,500 crores a year. The dam costed us about 1.5 lakh crores. And after doing all these in 2 to 3 years, the dam broke. You might have seen the Kaleshwaram, world's largest dam. It broke now. The burden of repaying the loan is on the state. Nearly 20-30% of the money goes for repaying the loan. and the dam remained like that. All these because the state wanted to grow rice. And state wanted to grow rice because it need not intervene in the market, and government procures. So these interconnections between policy and practice, if we don't understand, we cannot find a solution for the problem we are talking about as the adaptation to the climate change. Now let's talk about climate change and then what is happening. Every acre of rice contributes nearly about 10 tons of, every hectare contributes nearly about 10 tons of GHG emissions, carbon dioxide equivalent emissions. Telangana has 1 crore acres. And if all this has to be absorbed, and then if you have to have forest kind of thing, you need 8 times the area of Telangana to remove all that, which is not going to happen. So we are going to have to live with that. So what is the solution? One, I think we need to look at changing the cropping patterns. Second, you need to look at the changing production practices. These two are very important. So put money where you can get the results, where better adaptation can happen. Say, for example, if you are shifting towards millets, every kg of millet requires only about 200 liters of water. Compare it versus against 5,000 liters of water. It gives you enough of nutrients. If enough support is provided, people can shift. Instead of chemical fertilizers, shifting towards organic production systems. Today, chemical fertilizer subsidies are around 2.5 lakh crores. Money spent on organic farming is about 100 crores. And that 100 crores is only on trainings, not to the farmers. So why these shifts are not happening? And this is not only between the technology, it is also between the regions, I would say. So for example, a farmer living in Punjab, on average per hectare, gets nearly about 30,000 rupees as a subsidy, power and electricity, power and fertilizer subsidy. A farmer living in Odisha gets nearly 3,000 rupees. A farmer living in Bihar will get less than that. There is a regional variations also. So can we move towards an equitable support systems? That's what can help. I think that's an important framework we need to understand. Next, please. Sorry, I'll do that. So the water crisis, like I mentioned, this map clearly shows the groundwater levels. So depleting groundwater levels because we are pumping out more water. 15 years back, Government of India took a decision, since all the West is looking red, we'll shift this to East rather than trying to reduce the water consumption in the West. Rice doesn't need so much water. It can actually be reduced. We don't need actually so much rice. We can reduce the rice production by nearly 50%. Still, we can meet all our needs. And we are exporting so much of rice. Exporting of rice is also exporting of water. It is also exporting of distress. Every dam built in this country displaced more people. Bad practices. You might have seen some of these stories recently. There was a hair loss which was found in Buldana district of Maharashtra. Then they realized it is because of the increasing selenium in the wheat, and that wheat comes from Punjab. And then the wheat in the selenium in wheat was increased because there was a huge mining happening in Aravalli Mountains. So water coming from Aravalli Mountains carried the high selenium. So these interconnections between the resources is something which is very, very critical, which is getting compounded by our own interventions, what we are adding to that. And last year, there was also a study done by this year. Actually, in January, there was a study done by ICR, which also shows that in the last 50 years, the nutrient content in food is going down. Nutrient content in food is going down because your soil is not having the nutrients. So if you're talking about anemia in, say, Chhattisgarh or anemia in Odisha, it is because soils are anemic. Your soils are anemic. So your palak grown there also is anemic. So whatever you are eating, you may think your carrot has iron, but doesn't have. Your wheat, all these food have less and less of nutrients. This is what is happening. So how do we go forward? I think in front of us, if I had to say one thing we need to do, I think the soil conservation is the most important thing. US started in 2000, I think it was in 1930, after the Great Dust Bowl happened. You all can see what happened during the Great Dust Bowl. It was a huge disaster in US. And they made it as a national, soil is a national asset. And they made it that every inch of soil has to be covered. I think in India, if we don't get into that kind of situation, if we don't cover each inch of the soil and make it as a national asset and the national responsibility to maintain the soil fertility, it's not going to happen. And soil management is not about chemical fertilizers. Chemical fertilizers is a small part of the story, and we need to get down on that significantly. I think soil is one important issue we need to look at. Second important issue is about the water. We need to conserve water because the water you cannot make. Whatever water is there, you need to use. So less and less water use is what is required in agriculture, and distribute it so that more and more people can use it. So move away from the rice-based, wheat-based cropping systems to other crops. I think these two can be the starting points. While these can be good practices, that is not sufficient. They're essential. So we need to move on in terms of moving towards regenerative agriculture. So it can be, starting point can be a good agriculture practices, moving towards sustainable agriculture practices, and towards regenerative agriculture. That's going to be one transition process we can do at the agro-ecosystem level, at the farmers level. But this cannot happen unless there is a change in the policy and the market level. If all of us want you eat only rice and wheat, but if you want farmers to grow millet, it's not going to happen. And also from a consumer side, many of us don't think 60, 70 years back, all our forefathers or grandparents were working in the farm, so they needed more of carbohydrates. So as our livelihoods change, our lifestyles have changed, we actually don't need so much of carbohydrates. We can live with less than 1/3 of the carbohydrates we are eating today. In fact, eating more of carbohydrates is what is causing all the problems, the obesities and all. Unfortunately, Indian body type is a spindle body type. So if you look at in the West, if you eat more of carbohydrates, sugars or carbohydrates, fat accumulates entire body. So because they're tall, fat accumulates all over the body. In India, it accumulates in the middle of the body. That's why we become like a spindle, then we'll become round. And this is what is happening. And it is increasing the problem. It's not the chocolates. It's actually your rice which is increasing, your wheat which is increasing your fat in the body. Extra nutrients generated get stored in the body if you're not spending. And that is the major problem. So we need to look at these things in terms of moving away. Then we have a lot of resources, natural resources, finance resources, which we can put in to build the adaptation. And if you put the entire country and divide it into 3 areas, I would say there are 3 different kinds of interventions are possible. One, look at the tribal areas where inputs use is very low. And can we look at them and then support them in terms of sustaining what they are, and then increase the cropping intensity so that they can get better yields. They're anyway not using it, and they don't get any support from the government. We need to invest more so that they can sustain better. Don't push in the name of modern agriculture all the technologies which we have and then destroy that. They know what they want to do, but the income coming is not sufficient. So how do we intensify the production there is what we need to look for. Second area is the high input areas like Punjab, Haryana, which is not only destroying themselves, but destroying others. They are also in a deep crisis. So we need to put a lot of resources there because the interventions we made in the last 60 years in the name of country food security, we are all responsible. So public should invest there, move them in terms of changing the practices, changing the cropping system so that all the problems both in natural resource management, so your soils are degrading, water is polluted, there's a pesticide problem, cancer problem, stubble burning, so there's a air pollution problem. So all these can go away if you move away from rice wheat system. And within rice wheat system, if you want to find a solution, you are not going to find. I think that is the important thing. So if Punjab, Haryana can move towards, say, pulses, oilseeds, and vegetable production, it may require about, say, 20-25,000 crores investment over the next 5 years. Probably government should put in. And then help the farmers to make a shift. Without that, trying to clean up is not going to happen. Then the third area, which is nearly 50% of the country, is very inefficient use of resources. Very inefficient use. We use more water, get less yield. We use more fertilizer, less get yield. because your soil itself doesn't have any nutrients. So try to put technology in terms of what is more suitable crop there, and then look locally what is adapted. That's the kind of technology, and a lot of examples are available on that. So the markets and policy should work towards that. Then only things work, rather than looking at unified technology or looking at entire country needs one kind of technology, or looking at entire country requires one kind of market. Can we look at local production systems and local markets? I think that is the important issue. And for this to happen, I think we also need to look at how we built community managed systems. Say earlier, natural resources were managed with a community. The moment panchayats government took over is what the crisis came in. As long as they were in the community side, they were really good. And today in agriculture, innovation is taken over by the institutions. Where is the people's knowledge used? Where is the people's knowledge used? Today we are saying, I invented a new rice, so I need an IPR. But somebody invented that this grass has rice which can be eaten, right? And they preserved and conserved over decades. Why are we ignoring all that? India used to have nearly about 1.5 lakh rice varieties. Today, 85% of rice comes from 10 varieties. So such a kind of monoculture is what is happening. So last couple of slides. So in terms of moving away, I think the pathway is very clear. Conserve your soils, use as much, harvest as much water as possible, plan your cropping systems based on that. Simple. And that's what Rajasthan used to do. That's what Gujarat used to do. That's what Telangana used to do over a period of time. Now we were telling them what to grow. And then we created pulls and pressures to do that. And that's what is creating the problem. So leave it to the people to decide, and then only support so that they can take better decisions. I think that's what the system we need to move on. Water harvesting is one thing. Second is the adaptive cropping systems. Moving away from single crop towards multiple crops is a better option. Anything, it could be vegetables, it could be pulses oil seeds, it could be anything. Growing single crop, cereals after cereals is the problem. So rice wheat system, I think, has to be do away with. So can we have a kind of signaling system, say what is red? Certainly don't do. Green, which traffic signal approach, where we say these are the practices which should not be done. These are the practices which should be done. And in between, there are practices where you can exercise cautious approach. I think that's a model we need to look at about the practices. Rather than saying a binary approach, saying only natural farming, only organic farming, or only conventional, can we look at what is the better way to go forward and have national targets in terms of, say, can we reduce water use in agriculture by, say, 50%? Or can we look at, say, fertilizer use by 50%? If such a kind of crisis is what is happening, and reduce the soil degradation by 25% in the next 10 years. So that's the kind of targets we need at the national level. And integrating with livestock is something which is very important. Today, there's a lot of breaking up at the field level, village level happening, because, say, income from agriculture, if you look at, today, it is about 25 to 30% is what is coming from crop production. Rest of it earlier used to be from various professions which families have. I would say family professions. So it could be carpentry, it could be weaving, it could be many other livelihoods. All those livelihoods have fallen flat. Today, your income has to come from either livestock or has to come from crop production. And these two together is around 35 to 40% income what farmers are getting today. Rest of it is from the wages. And wages are going down significantly. And also in terms of improving their skills, there's no effort at all. Agriculture labor, for example. Just to put you in a, again, rice context, whenever we think about rice, can I take 5 minutes more? 2 minutes, fine. So in the rice context, whenever you think about rice, you all see women working in the rice fields. No? All imagine the rice field, there's a water, there's a woman working there, probably in a bending situation, no? Putting the, doing a weeding or planting this one. To transplant 1 acre, the woman has to walk nearly 16 kilometers. Imagine someone bending and then planting 16 kilometers. Why after 70 years of independence still we are doing that? Why don't we have small mechanization which can help women to do it better? Any mechanization comes in to replace them with a man running a machine and then taking away that activity also. Rice fields with water increases the humidity, and transplantation is done during the daytime, so temperature also increases. And those impacts of heat on labor are never studied. And we have not come across any technology, say cotton, for example, cotton harvesting. Every bowl women harvest, and how do you carry to the bunds? You carry a sack on your back. Imagine I'm carrying a sack on my back. I'm in a cotton field. I'm plucking it in, putting in my back, carrying it. Summer heats, harvesting in a cropping system where there is a water. The temperature goes up. So this is the kind of situations which people are. So technology should be very relevant to the local conditions where people can adapt. I think that's where we need to look at. And these practices will reduce the heat, because the soil temperature goes down if you start mulching. If you increase the organic matter, then water holding capacity increases. Then you don't need to put more water. Those kind of things is something which is very, very critical. Next, please. Sorry, I'm keeping forgetting. And the lastly, say today farmers' income comes from price and yield plus the subsidies. And the subsidies drive bad practices is what is happening today. So can we move from that towards an ecosystem services model where you can quantify the better contribution done by the farmers in terms of, say, I reduce the electricity use, so can I get compensated? I use less water, can I get compensated? Rather than giving me free power to use as much water as I want. If I'm conserving more soil, can I get compensated for that? I think that's the shift we need to make. Then only it survives. Agriculture survives, and then adaptation can be built. Otherwise, in the current model, finding solution is extremely difficult. So we just made a calculation. This is the last slide. 0.1% increase in soil organic matter, 0.1% increase in soil organic matter can take away nearly 3 tons of carbon dioxide from the environment. Nearly 3 tons from the environment. So a calculation done is that 2%, if global soil organic matter can increase to 2%, which is quite possible, the entire excess carbon dioxide in the environment can be taken away. And soil is the only source where you can take away this. So I think we need to focus on this. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ramu.
This is our Academy for Agroecology, where we have a research and training center. Krishna Sudhakar. Thank you very much. Any questions?
So I'll take questions after this. Do come. Please take your seat. We have two speakers who've joined online, and I know they both have a hard stop at 12. So apologies, Dr. Ramu, if I try to rush you a little. Divya, if I might come to you, since we've talked about agriculture, and maybe in this sequence, we can talk about how is your understanding of fisheries being affected. Of course, we know that ocean level, sea surface temperatures are rising, and those are affecting the kind of fish available, and even the physiology of seafood, which is changing. What are your observations, and how you're seeing adaptation in food also? I think that's one thing which in-season fish is doing a lot, and one of the few who was looking at consumption, exactly what Dr. Ramu also said, that ultimately it's not just a production, but the consumption cycle also, which needs to be addressed. So if I might put both these joint questions to you. Thanks, Divya.
Sure, thank you very much. And also thank you for having me online. Yeah, in terms of what is happening in the ocean, I think it reflects very much what Dr. Ram was just saying, with respect to the agriculture on land, except that in the ocean, everything is happening much faster and at a much larger scale. So the changes that we are seeing are happening so rapidly that communities really have to struggle to kind of keep up with even just the mitigation part, forget about adaptation and so on. So just as on land with the farmers, there is a lot of debt among the fishing community itself. And this, in some ways, decreases their resilience to climate change impacts. At least for farmers, there are options like NABARD and other agricultural banks for them to access capital. Whereas for the fishing communities, even these kind of avenues don't seem to exist. So as a result, when the ecosystems are changing, when the kind of species that are found in the oceanic systems are changing, it is quite difficult for the fishermen to keep up. I'm not sure if people realize, but to catch different kinds of fish, actually you need different kinds of nets. And each of these nets is quite expensive. So each time the species change and so on, it is quite a large investment that the fishermen need to make. That is one side of it. The other side of it is, as you said, what we are eating. Just as in the case of rice and wheat and so on, the number of different things that we are eating with respect to seafood has also shrunk dramatically. We have at least 100 different edible varieties of seafood that can be commercially eaten and so on. In cities, we are eating about 6 to 10. If we are talking about this as a school exam and we get 6 to 10 out of 100, we are clearly failing as consumers. And it's not just a failure that affects the fishermen and the ecosystem, it's a failure that is affecting our health. Because the diversity of what we eat is what allows us to maintain our health. So I think this combination of things, for one, people were not really aware. They were more going with convenience in terms of how easy is it to buy the fish, how few bones are there, it shouldn't be too strong a taste, all these kinds of things, rather than thinking about diversity, health, ecosystems, and so on. So there's clearly, just as in the farms, there's a clear disconnect between consumption and production. And this is the disconnect that needs to be addressed. So at In Season Fish, what we are trying to do is to make these connections, trying to get people who are eating seafood to talk to the fishermen who are catching the seafood, see what the issues are, and see how they can start eating in ways that match what the ecosystem is providing. The problem is that historically our cuisines and all that have developed based on many years of finding certain things in certain areas. So in Maharashtra, for example, you have certain big fish like rawas that people love to eat. Whereas in Tamil Nadu, it might be more, fish like the threadfin breams, the small snappers, and so on. But all of that has changed now because of climate change. You no longer get that much rawas in Maharashtra. You no longer get that much of threadfin breams in Tamil Nadu. So people's eating culture needs to keep up with these changes in order for not only the ecosystems to be resilient, but also our food systems to be resilient.
Thank you, Divya. Very rightfully spoken, and absolutely that what we eat is also getting affected if we are not looking at the varieties which are traditionally available to us. Akshata, if I might come to you here, and we've discussed a little about the kind of finance that's available. And of course, NABARD is one of the organizations which is providing adaptation finance towards agriculture and other such projects. How is ADB looking at India as a food basket for the region, for outside of India? It is producing, India is one of the major producers and exporters of a lot of various food types, be it fruit varieties, cereal crops, etc. What is the sort of thinking and strategy, both in terms of supporting production and also in terms of supporting sustainable practices to ensure that what we've just heard, that it is not something which we are sitting on a time bomb, so to say?
Thank you so much, Gunjan. I'm very honored to join this panel, and very interesting questions you've posed. So I'll I'll begin by talking about the problems you've highlighted, also would reflect on the conversation which was started by Professor Tripathi and my co-panelist. So as I've been closely working on the food trends and very evident climate impacts, I would like to start by saying that these are not abstract risks. And we've been discussing about this since morning. And these are also not isolated events. They reflect a deepening pattern of climate volatility that directly impacts the smallholder farmers, food productions, and national supply chain. Now, in this context, the question is not whether we need to respond, but how quickly and effectively we can build resilience. Um, when we talk about designing agriculture and food policies in India today, they must be equipped to deal with both shocks and stresses, and that is where the role of MDBs come into picture. So whether it is heat, it is delayed rainfall, or it is back-to-back crop failure, this means that we really need to adapt to public procurement models, strengthening localized cropping strategies, and ensuring state-level investments in irrigation, in water security, and in agroecological buffers. That are not reactive but anticipatory. I would like to also reflect on the point raised this morning by Professor Tripathi about innovation and use of AI and digital technology. So digital tools and early warning systems will continue to play a critical role when we talk about food security and India being the food basket, and how heat stress is impacting that. But their impact depends on the reach and trust. It's not just about technology, it is also about delivery. Climate advisories must be multilingual, they must be hyperlocal, and they must be designed in partnership with the FPOs and with the local bodies. Lessons learned by ADB and other international organizations is that data becomes a power only when it reaches the right hands with context and clarity. So if I had to offer one practical and scalable action India must take in next 2 years is what my co-panelist also mentioned, is to invest in decentralized agriculture, resilience, infrastructure, and diversification of crops. Especially when we talk about diversification of crops, we have excessive paddy, a water-intensive crop, and excess of rice beyond a point of consumption. Then we talk about the decentralization of agriculture, resilience infrastructure, which includes to have more solid solar-powered cold chains, community-level water storages, and regional processing centers. On the consumption side, I believe that when Professor Tripathi was messaging that we really need to align to our traditions, I believe that consumption side tradition play a very important role. It is also a practical climate solution. Crops like millets and local pulses and dryland vegetables, they are naturally adaptive to climate resilience. So especially when we talk especially in the case of heat prone and water scarce districts. Now coming to the question on finance and the role of MDBs like ADB. So I would like to begin by saying that this month at ADB's annual meeting in Milan, ADB President Mr. Kanda announced that ADB will scale up its support to food systems by $40 billion by 2030. Now, this is one of the largest commitments globally to food and climate resilience. It includes investment in sustainable production, biodiversity, soil regeneration, and digital transformation. Most importantly, it focuses on making food system climate resilient across Asia and the Pacific. I would also like to highlight how ADB is contributing to this cause in India. ADB is actively supporting both upstream policy reform and downstream investments. We are working with Ministry of Agriculture and Farmer Welfare to develop India's National Adaptation Plan for Agriculture. This plan is a crucial step when we talk about systemically identifying the climate risk and prioritizing investment in resilience of food systems. At the same time, ADB is supporting the Department of Economic Affairs, Ministry of Finance to develop a climate finance taxonomy. The idea behind this taxonomy is to help identify, tag, and track climate-related public investments, including those in adaptation, which is vital for attracting green finance and mobilizing international climate funds for agriculture and allied sectors. Beyond these upstream efforts, we are trying to match them with our on-ground investments. So in Himachal Pradesh, ADB is financing HP Shiva project, which helps smallholder farmers to shift to climate-resilient fruit crops more suited to warming climate, and it combines irrigation infrastructure, market linkage, and value addition, reaching around 15,000 households in climate-affected districts. Similarly, in Maharashtra, ADB is supporting the Magnet project, which is focusing on strengthening horticulture value chains through financial intermediaries, loans, and matching grants. This is an innovative model where finance flows directly from farmer producer organizations to agri enterprises to invest in climate smart post harvest system in processing and in cold storage. ADB is also supporting the use of result-based lending where funds are tied to measurable climate resilient outcomes and blended finance models that leverage concessional capital to de-risk private sector investments. In the end, I would just like to say that these interventions reflect a system approach where policy, finance, infrastructure, and community level actions come together to make our projects real, visible, and scalable. Because at the end of the day, resilient food systems is not just about surviving the climate stress. They're also about securing livelihoods, nutrition, and dignity for the people who serve us and who feed us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Akshata. Very useful inputs and nice roundup. Divya, if I might ask you, what is the sort of one practical and scalable solution you would recommend that India needs to take, especially when it comes to its ocean seafood systems?
Yeah, so I think, I mean, it's difficult to kind of narrow it down to just one thing. But I think just as everyone has been saying, there are a lot of traditional knowledge systems that have allowed for fisheries to continue sustainably until now. And these knowledge systems are being threatened by modern, the way modern technology and the way blue economy is being framed at the moment. At the moment, it appears as if whatever is being done on land, the policy is sort of trying to take that same model and apply it to the ocean, which doesn't seem to make a lot of sense, given that it's not even working on land. Whereas I think if we just take a leaf out of the knowledge that fishing communities already have, the traditional management systems that they have, if we can build a blue economy from there, I think that would really help. And also to understand that it is not just about fisheries management or ocean management or something else like that, but that food systems include all of these things. It includes us as the consumer, it includes the people who are participating in the trade, as well as the people who are actually producing the food or collecting the food from the sea. I mean, being part of this food system gives you the right to access the food, but it also gives you the responsibility then to eat the food or choose the food in a more sustainable way. So I think taking this kind of knowledge from these sessions with respect to the farming, with respect to the kind of advisories that in-season fish provides on which seafood to eat at which time, taking that knowledge and actually translating it into your everyday behavior and everyday practices of buying food, I think is really important. And also understanding that you are part of this larger system, which includes different actors, but also includes the traditional knowledge systems that people have developed over generations. All of this, I think, really needs to be recognized and highlighted.
Thanks, Divya. And if I might request both of you to just stay a bit, I do want to bring in Megha ji and Meena Ben, who are here, and they are representatives of what's happening on the ground from Seva. Megha ji, if I might ask you, a lot has been said and discussed, but just overall, what is your experience and understanding? And Meena ji, आपके लिए भी क्या जमीन पे हो रहा है? बहुत सारी बातें अभी हुई हैं, मगर आपके क्या उसके ऊपर observations हैं? If you can share some of that.
So thank you, Gunjanji, and thank you, Climate Trends, for inviting Seva. We are happy to be here on behalf of 3.2 million women members of Seva from 19 states of India. So our presentation will cover three major aspects. One is film. Maybe we can start with the film, and then Meena Ben will share her experience as a farmer. What are the impacts and what we are doing at Seva, and overall Seva, I will speak. So maybe we can start with the film first.
હાથે રાંધવાનું, હાથે આવક લાવવાની, હાથે કામ કરવાનું અને આ જાત ગરમીના કારણે જાન ટપી જાય.
પતરા ને બધું ઉડતું દેખાય છે, પણ જ્યારે ગરમી આવે છે ત્યારે ગરમી દેખાતી નથી, પણ ખાસ કરીને અનુભવીએ છીએ અને એટલી અનુભવીએ છીએ કે આપણે પોતે પણ તો દાચતા હોઈએ, પણ એનો જે શ્રમજીવી બહેનો છે એની આખી આજીવિકા પણ
So thank you. We have a visual presentation of how the informal sector women are being affected. So now I will request Meena Ben to speak and share her experience. Meena Ben is a farmer herself from Little Run of Kutch, and she's also a grassroots leader and Seva's executive body representative. So Meena Ben.
नमस्ते, मेरा नाम मीना है और मैं गुजरात के कच्छ डिस्ट्रिक्ट से हूँ और पिछले 12 साल से मैं सेवा की मेंबर हूँ और मैं सेवा की तीसरी पेटी हूँ। जैसे कि मेघा बेन ने बताया तो मैं सेवा के कारोबारी मेंबर भी हूँ। तो हीट के बारे में कल से बात हो रही है, तो हीट वेव जो है वो हमारे खेत काम करती बहनें जो है उनके लाइफ में क्या इम्पैक्ट लाए हैं। तो मैं मेरी बात करती हूँ तो हमारी मम्मी और मेरी दादी जो है वो भी खेती का और पशुपालन का काम करते हैं, एनिमल हस्बेंड्री का काम करते हैं। तो मैं खेती का काम करती हूँ। इस साल की हम बात करें तो हम कई साल से देखते आ रहे हैं कि इतनी सारी हीट जो गर्मी है वो पहले हम नहीं देखी थी, लेकिन 2 साल से बहुत सारी गर्मियां हैं। तो इस साल के हमने जो पाक हमने बोए थे, कुछ भी हमने जैसे कि मूँगफली है, कि दिवेला है, एरंडा की बात करें तो वो इस साल बहुत ही कम हुआ है, क्योंकि हीट इतनी थी कि वो उगा ही नहीं इतने अच्छे से। तो फिर हम खेती काम करती बहनें जो है हमारे वहाँ, तो खेती में जो अच्छे से कुछ पाक नहीं होते हैं, तो फिर उसके साइड में हम एनिमल हस्बेंड्री यानी कि पशुपालन का काम करते हैं। तो पशुपालन का भी काम में इस साल में हीट उसका भी इतना ही इम्पैक्ट हुआ है। जैसे कि हमारे पशु है, वो पहले इतनी सारी गर्मी नहीं थी, तो वो खेत में कहीं भी चरने के लिए जाते थे, तो वो वहाँ का जो चारा था वो इतना ठंडा था कि यहाँ पर पानी भी था, लेकिन ये इतनी सारी गर्मी के कारण वो चारा भी है वो गर्म हो जाता है बहुत सारा। तो वो जब गायें जो है वो खाती हैं, तो उनको भी जैसे कि हम कुछ भी खाते हैं गर्म, तो पेट में हमें ऐसा होता है, तो वो हमारे पशु जो है वो चरने के लिए जाते, तो बहुत सारा उनका बफारा जो हम बोलते हैं, उनको भी ये बफारा टाइप होता है। और गाय भी जब प्रेग्नेंट होती है, तो उनको भी ये हीट के कारण बहुत सारी उनको दिक्कतें आती हैं। तो इसकी वजह से इस साल अगले साल और इस साल भी ऐसा ही है। ज़्यादा गर्मी की वजह से हमारे गाय पशुधन जो है, पशु ही हमारे धन होते हैं, क्योंकि हमारे उसमें से ही हमारी आवक आती है, रोजगारी हमारी उस पर ही टिकी रहती है। तो इस साल भी हमारा पहले की तरह वो 3 या 4 लीटर दूध देती थी, लेकिन ये बहुत सारी गर्मी है, इसके कारण वो लीटर या आधा लीटर ही दूध देती हैं गायें। तो हमने हमारे जैसी जो बहनें हैं, उनको हमने जो हीट वेव का बीमा सेवा ने हमने लाया है, तो पिछले साल भी हमने 250 रुपये बीमा का प्रीमियम था वो भरा था, और मेरे जैसे कई सारी बहनों को 1250 रुपये उनको मिले थे उनके अकाउंट में ही। तो वो कहाँ-कहाँ पर उपयोग लाए, जैसे कि उन्होंने उन्होंने कुछ पोषक आहार के लिए उन्होंने उस पैसे को इस्तेमाल किए थे, और मैंने भी इस साल मैंने 500 से ज़्यादा बहनों को हीट वेव बीमा जो है हमारा सेवा की ओर से, उसमें हमने इंक्लूड किया है सारी बहनों को। बस मेरा इतना ही कहना है, और सेवा जो है वो हमेशा बहनों के लिए मदद करती आई है, और कई सारे हीट वेव बीमा नहीं, बहुत सारी ट्रेनिंग और कई सारे लोन्स वगैरह और बचत मंडल जो है उससे हम बहनों को मदद करते हैं। थैंक यू सो मच।
So we heard. So we saw the film on Seva's member who are into different trades, and we heard about farmer member of Seva, how they are impacted. So we have 3.2 million women from different trades, around 125 different small trades, which are categorized into major 4 categories like home-based workers or service providers, producers, and hawkers. And so all are being affected by these heat and the climate change. So we completed 50 years before 3 years. And at that time, what we thought that how we become relevant, we want to celebrate, but we also want to become a relevant because we have third generation as our members. So the dadis and the mothers, and now Meenaben is the third generation. So we have a larger, younger members, and how we become relevant to these members. And that's how we initiated the Cleaner Sky campaign, Swachh Akash campaign. So basically our founder Ilaben believed that cleaner environment is not only right of humans, but every living thing on earth. And considering that how we make the shift. So we have a 55% members in agriculture in rural area. So we had various activities under Cleaner Sky campaign, starting from awareness. So not only awareness to women, but children and the communities, that how we have to shift these our practices, our habits. And through that, how we have made the information flow from down to up and up to down about the changes in the climate and how the members should take precautions. So our members are semi-literate, illiterate, so we use the audio messaging system. We have a groups of members in different districts, and those information were provided. So we have both adaptation and mitigation measures taken. Apart from that, we also made the plans, climate plans. The climate impact is different based on the geography and the location. The impact that we face in Gujarat the impact may be different in Ladakh or Kashmir or the down south. So based on the basic understanding of what should be the cleaner sky, how we can make our environment, our soil, our houses, our water clean. So considering that the states have made their action plans, and we also made the heat plan specifically considering the concurrent heat events. And together with that, we have parametric insurance, we have green villages, we have health related aspects, we have regenerative agriculture considering the larger family farmers, and the biggest challenge is why does farmer remain hungry? The family farmers who provide food to entire humanity, sometimes they have to sleep hungry because of these climate and market events. So how we can shift to regenerative farming practices, that is also done, and how we make the farm as enterprise and farmer as entrepreneur, and how we provide the new generation farmers to make the farming as lucrative as they would like to, seeing as a regular cash flow. So we have taken several interventions, but here I would like to focus on three major interventions. One is about the parametric insurance. We initiated a pilot in 2023 with around some farmers, and that year it did not trigger. Second year was 2024, and the parametric insurance it was on heat, and heat was the IMD's daytime highest temperature was trigger. And 2024, many farmers, if I take numbers, around the insurance was taken by 50,000 members from 22 districts across 3 states, and the premium they have paid was 446 rupees per member, and the trigger threshold were meticulously designed to account for varying temperatures in different districts ranging from 40.6 to 46.1 degree. And this product payout was multiple times in May 2024. The insurance triggered in 17 out of 22 districts, and 46,000 plus members received payout ranging from rupees 151 to 1656 in this season. So total payout for these members, if you consider, it was Indian rupees around 4.9 crore rupees. So it not only helped the members to reduce their vulnerability, because we have a informal sector, day-to-day income was a major income, and if they don't earn, they do not have food. So this helped them to have their food security. But apart from that, the financial inclusion also happened because the transfer was in their bank account. So we opened the bank account of these members, or they revived their closed account. Second intervention is about the Livelihood Recovery and Resilience Fund. We all know that the women face cultural and structural barriers, and usually they are not part of the land holding due to these challenges. And so they are not bankable from the formal banks or microfinance, or they do not have access to the government schemes related to agriculture. So at the time of climate event, we have women members only and the family farmers. So at the climate event, Gujarat was not covered by any insurance. And those only who have taken loans through the insurance, they get the insurance. So these larger farming community, the women farmers were not covered against the climate events. And this Livelihood Recovery Resilient Fund together with parametric insurance. So Livelihood Recovery Resilient Fund is a combination of blended finance, loans, grants, which help us to provide immediate loans to women members at the time of climate event. So the amount range between 10,000 to 50,000 rupees, and it was immediate. If there is also insurance in other states, it take around almost 1 month to get the money back from the insurance. And during that time, the season has gone. But this immediate support helped women to save their season and produce for the month. So for that, we have given loans to around 7,000 women. This is a pilot and we would like to expand. It also combines the regular saving of our members against this livelihood recovery resilient fund to protect themselves against any climate event. And the third one is about the green villages and the green wards. So this is basically, it seeks to ensure access to clean energy in the pockets of these villages. So there we would like to mitigate the adverse effect of the heat wave by enhancing the affordability and availability of the clean energy solutions. So all these different activities that I told, but together with that, it also focuses on energy. We use energy for agriculture and other trades as well as the household purposes. So how we can transform these energy to renewable energy, and how we make this renewable energy affordable to these informal sector members. So these green energy are not at all affordable for them. So we try to link the biogas with the carbon credits and reduce the price of the biogas from around 35 to 40,000 to 9,000 rupees and give them an affordable installment basis. And that's how around 10,000 biogases have been made. Together with that, there are pumps being used in irrigation. So how they can transform to these solar pumps together with the precision irrigation, not only pumps, but how they can also reduce their consumption of the water. And there are around 13 different kinds of solar-based activities and the technologies that we try to link with the farmers and other trade-related members. So all in all, we have around 150 these green villages. So what we do is at least 3 to 4 kind of technologies. If the 30 to 40% village they adopt, then we consider it as a green village. So these are 3 major interventions that I shared that Seva is doing with our members in different states. So thank you very much. Namaste.
Thank you so much, Megha Ben, and thank you, Meena Ben, for sharing what's happening on the ground. I think these are extremely relevant, important solutions which you are talking about. And I think what you're saying about the farmer becoming the entrepreneur, I think what Dr. Ramu's talked about, the need for technology at the local level, I think is what can really empower. I know we are really, really over, and the tea break is way overdue, and I think IIC has limitations. But maybe we can take one question and we can continue the questions one-on-one with our experts here during the tea break, if there is any right now.
So इस साल में हमने करीबन 6 स्टेट में किया है with 2.5 lakh of members, and we are also adding earlier year it was only heat that we had kept as a parameter, but with this the flood is also one of the parameters. No, premium will be more compared to the earlier years. This time it is around 600 rupees. But this is also, some support is also received to reduce the amount from the members, and the members contribute. So it's a combination during this pilot phase.
Thank you so much, Megha Ben, and thank you to all our participants. Very critical discussion. I think the key talking points are that we need to look at adaptation, both in terms of production as well as consumption, because like the IPCC says that there is a point of adaptation. We are not going to have the ability to continuously adapt, and once 1.5 and 2 degrees I mean, when if we cross or when we cross, it will become more and more difficult or even near impossible to adapt. So it's critically important that we look at this seriously. And of course, like Dr. Ramu was talking about, the equitable support system that is required for our food systems in terms of policy and in terms of decision making to ensure that we are looking at what we call a more adaptive system for food. But thank you, everyone. Thank you to our speakers for joining us. Please continue the conversations through the tea break. We'll reconvene here at 12:30.
No, before that, we would prefer people just bringing
Okay.
their tea in the room.
Okay,
and-
take 10, 15 minutes and we'll be
Yeah.
back in the room. The last and final session will be on finance, and our speakers are joining us from MOEFCC, Niti Aayog, etc.
But just before that, I would quickly request Kunjan to please give mementos to the speakers and gather together for a group photo. And a quick group photo would also work, Kunjan. Thank you. Archana? Hmm. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I would request everyone to please be seated. We are now beginning a session that cuts across the sectors and is central to every climate conversation. And we all know that it is finance. The session titled Unlocking Financial Avenues to Strengthen India's Heat Resilience will focus on how we can leverage public and private capital. Moderating this timely session is Mr. Lavanya Jaina, advisor at Climate Trends. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our panel. Mr. Amit Jain, energy specialist at the World Bank, who brings international experience in clean energy finance, resilience investments, and green bonds. Dr. Suranjali Tandon, associate professor at National Institute of Public Finance and Policy, a prominent researcher on carbon taxation, climate budgeting, and public expenditure tracking for sustainability. Joining us online are Mr. Venugopal Mutkur, director at Niti Aayog, where he works on microeconomic strategy, climate economics, and cross-sectoral resilience planning. Also joining us virtually, Dr. Jaydeep Barua, Director of Assam Science, Technology and Environment Council and Assam Energy Development Agency. He comes with insights from Assam's integrated climate finance innovations at the state level. Over to you, Lavanya.
Okay, thank you very much for your time. So I think this is the first time we are discussing about finance for heating. So most of the time in Delhi circle or the climate community circle, all the time we keep on discussing about climate mitigation finance, climate adaptation finance. Nobody talk about where the money will come from. So there is a series actually I was watching a couple of months back. So all the time we'll come out with a commitment. Okay, this is what we are going to do, we are supposed to do, but nobody talks about money, from where the money will come. Okay, everybody is talking about, okay, let's do something on controlling the heat or adapt to heat. But here we are talking about money. We have been hearing about heat for the last 1.5 days, but now today's session we'll talk about how to finance the heating solutions. So if I understand the heating solutions, I believe I can, as a finance person, divide into two parts. One is the public finance part, as well as the private finance part, because some of the heating solutions, for example, better city design or plantation or so, which can definitely cool down the temperature, it needs public finance. But there are certain heating solutions actually, or cooling solutions, which is more of a private financing solution, but at the same time, government has a role to play. So we have interesting list of panelists. We have Suranjali, who has a public finance background, and we have Amit also. I mean, World Bank is talking a lot about cooling solutions nowadays. We'll hear from his side that what are the solutions, what interventions World Bank is thinking to inject capital flows or accelerate capital flows for heating. And we have also Venu as well as Mr. Barua, who will talk about from the central government perspective as well as state government perspective. Okay, I'll start with Suranjali with you, because when we are talking about heating, so most of the time we are talking about how heating can help everybody. Okay, it's not about cooling solutions which can help few individuals or individual corporations or households, how it can help everybody. So I'll start with a very opening remark, how we can integrate financing with heating. Suranjali.
Thanks, Lavanya. That's a very broad question, and I'll try to just say a few things to set the context and then maybe discuss them more in detail later. Is to say that there are imminent effects at the moment of the extreme weather events, which includes heat for India. We've tried to quantify them, especially at the monetary policy level. For example, if you look at Reserve Bank of India's work, it looks at what happens to inflation if you have extreme weather events and whether this impact is rather long term. And we see that that is true. It is quite long term. What that means is that there are going to be effects on population, not just in terms of health, but also in terms of food security. And so that means that, while we're talking about a lot on having a mix of public and private finance, I think a lot of it will sit on public budgets. And in terms of what we can do, I think, I'll probably talk about this later when you ask me specific questions about certain things. I think in all cases, when you're dealing with extreme weather events, there are knee-jerk responses, which is to say we will immediately do certain things to help cope. And then there are these long-term strategies, which means that you need to switch or move communities as well as activities where there is less threat of such extreme weather events. And how do you strategize? I think so there needs to be, I know that Rashi is not here when she's doing a lot on the adaptation side. So I think those sort of strategies are actually important. And as well, so then those feed into your public budgets and how you think about financing. But maybe we could talk about them in specific if you have any queries, or maybe in the second round.
Yeah, thanks, Suranjali. Over to you, Amit.
Thank you very much, Lavanya. I'll just build upon what Suranjali said in terms of short-term and long-term financing. See, when it comes to cooling, what we have observed in India and also globally as well, that most of the financing and also technical assistance has so far mostly flown into the area of climate mitigation, looking at renewables, now battery storage and green hydrogen. Cooling is in one area which has been lagging both from the interest point of view and also from the upfront cost financing. So I would rather suggest, rather than reinventing the wheel, especially in terms of financing, we need to learn upon what exactly has worked in the climate mitigation space, especially from renewable energy and now battery storage, and then look at the business models and adapt it to cooling. Because cooling, especially as Suranjali mentioned, especially in urban areas, we can even look at today, May is now supposed to be one of the hottest month in Delhi itself. And it has, although it has received more rainfall than we expected. Couple of days back, we also saw thunder lightning at 2 a.m. I don't know if you have seen videos of that. This has not happened before in Delhi for many, many years. So extreme events are becoming more frequent in all parts of the world. And cooling strategies, both in terms of technology and financing, need to be upgraded and fast tracked very soon. First, to play a catch up game with other climate mitigation technologies, and also be at the front, right, and center of urban technologies going forward. Thanks, Lavanya.
Thanks, Amit. Over to you, Dr. Barua. If you can give your opening remark, the relationship between finance and heating solutions. And good to know that even World Bank is thinking beyond climate mitigation. Over to you, Dr. Barua.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for giving me the opportunity to be part of this important summit. And I would have been very happy to be there physically, but only a couple of days back I was in Delhi and come back. And today's the issue that heat summit is very important, and particularly in India now, in a large number of states, we are having the issue of heating and heat stress and all these things. If you look at Assam, though Assam is not in the list of 23 heat vulnerable states, as per the report prepared by the National Action Plan on Climate Change and Human Health. So, but yet, in the recent time, in Assam, we are having certain isolated heat wave kind of phenomena. And we have very small, though it is very small, we are having cases for this kind of heat-related illness in Assam. And I think these are some of the issues, and though we are not in the list of 23 heat vulnerable states, but if we see the broader picture of Northeast, I think we should have a proper documentation and some kind of surveillance mechanism. And if we can do it properly, then many of the issues can be handled. And then only the financing, whatever financing is required, will come into the way. So this is what we are thinking in Assam National the Health Mission, NHM, and in Assam is drawing a state action plan on climate change and human health. And they are the nodal officer, and State Disaster Management Authority is also handling such issues, disaster-related issues, because of climate extremities. If you look at the Assam, then Assam, the main vulnerabilities are mainly flood-related issues because of the extreme rainfall. But in recent times, we have seen the temperature rising in last 50 to 60 years. And there, now we need the proper surveillance mechanism. So I think all the states should look into the picture like that, so that we can get the proper financing, because our health infrastructure is improving. But as you have already said, that some kind of urban cooling and all these things issues we have to address, we need a lot of funding for that. If the organization like World Bank is coming forward, it will be very nice. But in Assam also, we have selected 13 cities, 13 districts, like Kamrup Metro, Dhubri, Kachar, and Nagaon, Shivsagar, Charaideo, etc. And these in districts now, some kind of monitoring exercise has been started. That is how we are now planning. And I think in this opening remark, I just want to stop now. If more questions come, and then I will interact. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Barua. Over to you, Venu.
Yeah, thanks, Lavanya, for having me here. I think I'll just make two important points. One, I think, is the work that what is happening at NITI, especially in terms of thinking about some of these issues, pressing issues like, the need for cooling. So one is that I think most of the people in the room probably are aware that NITI a year back has formed these interministerial working groups. And these interministerial working groups are the primary tasks is to come up with a roadmap for the country in terms of mitigation. While the roadmap was predominantly focused on in terms of understanding the mitigation choices, but there was a pressing need on the adaptation, which was emphasized by the lot of people who were part of those working group discussions. And in principle, Niti said that we're going to start adaptation line of work in terms of understanding how different adaptation measures can be put in place in terms of how to deal with some of these climate events, both either extreme or the slow onset events. So that's the first phase of work, and it's almost coming to the end now. Hopefully in a couple of months from now, we would see a 2070 roadmap in terms of how India's economy looks like, how the energy system looks like, how the emissions, some of those numbers probably look like. So that's the first phase of work, and in that phase of work, we also understand how the cooling demand predominantly will rise, right? So what is going to be the huge cooling demand that's going to come. The second leg of work primarily is what is interesting to this conference is where we started thinking about, while most of the organizations and most of the ministries do come up with roadmaps, but sometimes it's also important to think about how do we, where do we find projects primarily, in terms of a bankable pipeline of projects. And that's where Niti has been launching some leg of work in terms of building a pipeline of projects by looking at the cooling sector as well in a much deeper focus. Now, in the cooling sector, when we're looking at, in terms of understanding the bankable pipeline of projects, there are two things that comes into mind. One is where cooling can be proposed as a service. I think this is something that you will be hinting in the next part of the our deliberations. Where you can probably think of, rather than users owning the asset, can cooling be delivered as a service and be financed by either a RESCO or a RESCO primarily. So that's one business model that Niti is primarily thinking about. Or second is in terms of where the asset ownership cannot be not thought about, because people like residents probably would want to own the asset. So in that context, how do we actually promote more efficient cooling choices, either in terms of high efficient ACs or in terms of those solutions, passive cooling solutions? So how do we come up with some of those business models for those? I think these are the two legs of work Niti at the moment is working on. And hopefully during the next course of the deliberations, I'll talk a little bit more about the second leg of work. And let me just stop here at this moment.
And thanks, Venu. We'll speak about the cooling solutions as well as the project pipeline Niti Aayog is trying to create, which is good to know. So I'll start with Suranjali. So you just said about the role of public finance, because what I feel that particularly for the vulnerable section and for the entire population which are going outside outside buildings, it could be commercial buildings or it could be their own houses. So you need certain services to cool down the temperature, which can be livable for everybody who are going outside. In that context, at the same time, we cannot expand the budget. As an economist, we also know that, okay, what's the limitation of fiscal expenses? Is there any way that cooling or heat can be integrated with budgetary allocation or budgetary decisions? There are certain schemes, for example, Manrega or Amrit, which can be structured in such a way that heating can be a part of that.
Yeah, thanks, Lavanya. I think, even when was talking about asset ownership, I believe that we're talking about an externality, which means that a lot of people are going to be affected. And if we're saying that, there's going to be ownership of assets, it also means that there's going to be private user fee, which means that some people would be excluded per se from these services. So there needs to be a broad-based public way of thinking about how we're going to fund this. Now, you make a very valid point. We live in a practical world where governments are limited by their budget constraint. And we all like to look at the Fiscal Responsibility Budget Management Act to say that the government should not breach its fiscal target. So what you do within that constraint, and that's why I mentioned, we need to talk about long-term and short-term. Now you mentioned two very relevant schemes, which is Amrut and NREGA. I'd like to talk about their relevance in this context. So, you have MNREGA, which allows you to build assets, which are, in a sense, they help you cope with, heat. At the same time, you have also Amrut, which provides support with transportation on the urban side, to say, again, for coping strategies. Now, insofar as, these are looking at building assets, that's great. But we have to remember that it is going to be long term, and there are going to still be effects in the system. I think one aspect that needs to be thought about, and it was very moving to see the video that was shown in the last session, which means that the situation may get worse, and we also need to think of alternative ways of being employed. Schemes like NREGA have fixed number of days that you can be employed for. And there is no comparable urban scheme, which means that there also needs to be thinking on, while we build these assets, to say that what are we going to do with people who are affected. And again, Mr. Barrow was talking about data. I think there needs to be some kind of mapping of where there are the risks are more pronounced, and I think that's already being done. But you also look at what is your population employed in. And so do we need to move some people across? And, Lavanya, we've spoken so much about it in the transition on the mitigation side of what do you do with population that's affected. And I think this is also similar. So I think you can look at your public budgets more sensibly to say that we will put money which is in schemes which can be aligned more, and this is being done already in the NREG. You already have certain initiatives, like for example, in the last session was talked about, you have biogas being talked about. So you have some of those initiatives, but I think what we need to do is also draw out a list of activities, which SEVA is doing, right? So they have a list of activities where you say that we will do these few to cope. And I think those need to be integrated back into schemes to say that, well, these are now aligned with climate. So I think that strategic thinking is required, which can help bring public budgets in line with what we're talking about.
Yeah, thanks, Suranjali. So I'll come to you, Amit, because actually last year, World Bank came out with a report that they said that the market for sustainable cooling solutions in developing countries is close to $500-600 billion. And if you touch any of the companies which are manufacturing cooling solution in the stock market, their price to earning ratio could be more than 70 to 80 actually. So for non-finance people, it means it's expensive. People are valuing a lot to companies which are manufacturing cooling solutions in India. But the key recommendations from that report is that how to reduce capital cost and to fund high-risk cooling technologies and energy-efficient cooling technologies. And Venu also spoke about attracting private capital. So one of the key recommendations is that we need to reduce the cost of cooling solutions so that it can be affordable. So is there any suggestion coming from World Bank to attract private sector towards cooling solutions?
Yes, Lavanya, this is a very important question you have asked. And actually, you have asked three questions in one question. First, and I will differentiate all three just for audience understanding. First is, you're right, $516 billion is required for cooling solutions, right? Every year. Now, this kind of money, nobody has. Even Government of India doesn't have, even World Bank doesn't have this kind of money, right? So from where it will come, this money will come. And if you look at the climate mitigation, this money has come from private sector. That's why I started by saying that we have to learn from what has happened rather than reinventing the wheel. And as you mentioned, Vinu also mentioned about RESCO models and asset ownerships. No? So we have to look into that if we have to go into the $600-500 billion on that. Second, also you mentioned PE ratios, and you're right. PE ratio for not only cooling, but also look at climate mitigation technologies is more than 30, 35, 70 in case of cooling, which is not sustainable. But the reason P is very high because the investors are perceiving this as a gold mine for future, and that's why they are buying these kind of companies in the stock market and raising the P values, which is I don't know, step in the right direction, but at least they're putting faith in the cooling technologies. The report mentions about cost reductions and also mentions about interesting business models. I would like to here mention one specific business model which has worked in India, which has worked in climate mitigation, because on cooling, we are still starting. But if we learn from these business model, then that is the only way we can go for the target 500 to $600 billion. Lavanya, I'll quote actually from a report done by CPI, which you were partly involved in, which says that in India, we need about 350 to $400 billion every year if we have to go for the net zero goal. Currently, we are receiving only $45 billion. But what is important is among all these $1 billion is that out of the $40 billion, $20 billion is coming from public sector and 20 is coming from private sector. This is a very important number and this is a very poor number. Why I say poor? Because $20 billion of public sector is attracting only $20 billion of private sector. This is not sustainable. If we keep on going at this pace, the cooling $500 billion cannot be mobilized because the government of India or World Bank or public sector cannot invest $250 billion. Nobody has this kind of money. The investment from both World Bank and Government of India is already reaching at its limit when it comes to public sector investing in both climate mitigation and adaptation. Yes, we have overwhelmingly invested in mitigation and not adaptation, but for whatever reasons, the fiscal deficit has increased so much that we cannot keep on investing. The only way to move forward is involve the private sector and bring these billions of dollars. Several, we at least at the World Bank, we have demonstrated several examples. Reva Solar Park is one example where only $15 to $30 million from the World Bank was able to mobilize $500 million from private sector. Solar Rooftop Program is another example where we partnered with State Bank of India, and by using the MEGA guarantees, which again, the CPI report mentioned is a very cutting edge financing framework, we were able to mobilize $200 million from capital markets from London to refinance our own financing, which was underwritten by Government of India. So I think time has come even for cooling technologies to move away from public sector by using only the business models or the risk mitigation technologies like the guarantees, and then start mobilizing private sector, especially the institutional investors like the pension funds and global sovereign wealth funds. Thank you.
Thanks, Amit. And good to know that even World Bank is thinking about providing more risk guarantee instead of, as usual, debt financing all the time. So that's good to know. So I'll come back to Dr. Barua. That today in the morning, we were discussing about heat insurance also. I mean, there are one company I know in Ahmedabad, Seva, they spoke today morning, I think, about providing insurance coverage to vulnerable section of the society in Ahmedabad. So that kind of experiment has been done by the Kerala government, particularly for people who are working in the dairy sector. I believe that those kind of insurance schemes are heavily subsidized because since we are targeting a vulnerable section, it is impossible for them to pay the premium. So do you think that that kind of insurance model will be really helpful? Can it scale up? Or Assam government, is the government thinking about that?
Yeah, that's a very good question. You are giving example of Kerala and Ahmedabad. You see, if you see currently, the Assam is not in under the National Heat-related Illness Surveillance Program of Government of India because it is not among the heat vulnerable states. But still, there are some cases of this kind of heat-related illness. And the criteria for when we will tell it a heat wave like that, more than 40 degrees centigrade of temperature, and or 4 to 4.5 degree rise of temperature in the normal temperature range. So this kind of phenomena is not happening regularly in Assam, but in recent years there are cases, there are events that this type of things are happening. And if you tell about the insurance, yes, there are certain provisions in state government policies like State Disaster Management Authority, when the weather extremities are there, if something is caused by the weather extremities, then insurance cover is there, always there, and or financial support to the these people who are impacted are already there. Yes, the Seva type of model, I have also heard about that model. I think Seva has some activities in Northeastern region also. If this kind of things come, I think state government will take it very positively. And it is always required because looking at the current scenario, this kind of events are happening. But now what we immediately require, it is mentioned in the state action plan on climate change and human health also. The analysis of historic data, city data, with the mortality rate with observed temperature increase to establish heat impact based warning response and triggers. And that kind of data framework is extremely required now, because to prove that with the time series data and to link the temperature rise with the mortalities because of the weather extremities, it will be very important analytical tool for us. I think this kind of analysis is immediately required. Then we can strongly present our case for this kind of insurance policy. But yet, we have that provision. If any kind of heat-related ailments comes, and we can define that it is because of the, it fulfills the criteria of being heat wave, that facility is already there. And even the Ayushman Bharat, the list of diseases covered like this, some facilities are also there in this provision. But we need to go deeper into it. We have to have sustainable model for this kind of support, insurance support to the impacted people, mainly the vulnerable groups like the outside workers, because outside workers and then elderly people, children going to the schools. Now they are in Assam, the summer season is going on. And we will listen to regular cases of this kind of things, school children suffering in the schools during prayer time or something like that. Not only Assam, in many places in India. So these cases are now coming. Now we have to, the proper documentation and surveillance mechanism has to be stronger. But as on date, there is no such set mechanism to establish that. And this is my point of view. And the state government will be very positive if Seva kind of model can be in place in Assam. And already there are some provisions are there. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Barua, Dr. Barua. So, Menu, over to you. Since you are going now in 5 minutes, I was told that you have another meeting. So, can you give a broad overview? We heard from you, from Amit also. Everybody is talking about attracting private investment. Is there any broad action plan from Niti Aayog that, okay, this is the way we can attract private investment for cooling solutions? You spoke about creating project facilities, creating projects. You also spoke about blended financing. Is there any investment action plan? Although I understand that it cannot be a part of the working group created around climate change, but is there any broad action plan Niti Aayog is thinking about?
Yeah, so I think, Lavanya, I think you are correct that there's a separate stream of work that we're launching, especially on the cooling. And the idea is primarily to look at creating right business models in terms of attracting both public and catalytic public finance, so that, catalytic public finance can enable a much higher private finance to come in. Now, I think here there are some priorities in terms of probably starting with something like where cooling can be offered as a service. So probably looking at sectors like, for example, ATMs, right? The ATMs probably will constantly 24 hours need cooling services to maintain the temperature with the ATM machine. And these ATM services are typically handled by 4 to 5 agencies in the country. So where you can easily think about using such some models, primarily a ESCO model or RESCO model, and offer a cooling as a service, especially in that particular sector. So similar such examples are abundant, especially look at government buildings, look at retail spaces, where a combination of instruments, either be it in the form of what Amit has talked about, the risk guarantee mechanisms, can enable a larger fraction of private finance to come in. Now, to come to the question of how do we then mobilize finance for some of these difficult sectors or difficult sections of the society called low income groups, I think we have to look at potentially a different kind of model. For example, I can talk about, this is something that we have been deliberating over the course of last few weeks, is that if you can think about some of the efficient cooling services or adapting some of the passive cooling measures, you would actually avoid certain infrastructure, both in terms of transmission and distribution, which actually can cut down your electricity demand or cut down your peak demand. That actually means that discoms can avoid certain investments in infrastructure. So can those avoided infrastructure costs be used to mobilize or partially cover the gap that is needed to address the concerns of affordability for low income housing? So we have to look at variety of business models. I would not say that there's a single model that can apply to different use cases. So those are something that has been at this moment are being discussed and deliberated with some of the partners across the ecosystem. And hopefully in the coming means we would see more of this in terms of action. How do we create right business models which can be tailor-made for each use cases, but at the same time can bring the scale, right? So the most important is, especially is the scale, right? So we would want use cases which are scalable to start with, so that the impact created is much larger. So that's the focus Niti is working on. And unfortunately, because of the other commitments, I have to step away. But I would wish the conference a huge success. Thank you.
Thanks, Venu. So we heard a lot from Venu about business model, blended financing, attracting private finance, and he also spoke about scalable solutions, which are very, very important. So Ranjali, I have a question for you here. I mean, here we are talking about heat. Climate mitigation means everybody talking about, okay, let's create new financing mechanism for climate mitigation. Then inside climate mitigation, people are talking about create EV financing facility, renewable energy financing facility. Everybody talking about that. So since heat is also important, okay, so in the summer season, so is there any possibility that a separate financing mechanism or inside an existing financing mechanism, so the kind of attention it needs from the government is not getting? Do you think that there is a possibility to create and it will get the result we desire?
Yeah, thanks, Lavanya. I think, just listening to the conversation, I feel like we need to step back a little bit and also realize that long-term strategies are also your mitigation strategies. But what we saw in the video of Seva is that there is actually something very immediate that needs to be tackled. So while we can do all of this on all other fronts, there is an immediacy in some of the financing requirements. I think the other important point, and this is something that I was talking to Archana, was that we have got obsessed in the climate space to create different definitions of what we want money for. But that financial markets is on its own trip. It's functioning irrespective. So how about thinking about tilting the incentives for the financial markets so that we no longer have to draw this distinction? I think that is where the work needs to be done. We can create one more fund, we can create one more instrument, but all of that goes back into the large pool of private capital investment where risk and return are primarily the drivers. That being said, yes, there are ways we can think about it, and I would really appreciate if Meghaji would talk about who funds this parametric insurance, because I believe that it, as opposed to a traditional insurance, this it kicks in when there is a probability of a risk actualizing, and so therefore you can compensate those who are impacted. So it'd be nice to hear from you because you have ground level experience on who funds it, and I think public budgets need to be perhaps diverted here also, because it's not a realization on a full realization. It would be that you put money aside, but only part of it may actually come to be realized. The other thing is that there are disaster relief funds which are at the national level and the state level, which were also recommended by the 15th Finance Commission. Now, the problem there is that they only kick in when there is an extreme event, and it's a emergency response. Can we think of disaster in a more holistic way to say that, well, we don't have to do a knee-jerk response every time. We can also build up from here, and maybe those funds itself can be scaled up, but again, who contributes? Because at the moment, center seems to be contributing a lot more. at least at the national level? And then, so can states ask for more? Can Finance Commission talk a little bit more about strategies of funding? So those are some of the ideas I have around the questions that you asked. I hope I answered them.
Yeah, thanks. Good to know that. So I'll come back to you, Amit, because you said that we can understand that World Bank as a development finance institution, you have been pioneer in accelerating in certain things, for example, renewable energy. So I was in meeting with MNRE. He told me that World Bank had a financing facility or trying to push solar lamp at MNRE in 1990s. Okay, so in that case, here we are also from SEBA, we're hearing that most of the insurance is actually funded by public sector or it is funded by foundations. But here we are talking about a massive amount of capital. So there is so much money is not available. So is there any way World Bank is thinking, okay, let's create certain facility, certain credit line, okay, at least it can avail to low income households. For example, there are EV financing facility, there is rooftop solar financing facility. It is targeted to certain sections who cannot access capital from mainstream financiers at a certain rate. Do you think that that kind of solutions can be successful in India, where the low income segment can also raise capital by maybe for a 1 year, 2 years period of time and buy this heat cooling solutions?
This is a very interesting question, Lavanya, and I will again build upon what Vinu mentioned and what you are asking, because these two things are very interrelated. See, we have to understand why, when we talk about a particular technology, for example, cooling over here, why cooling has not succeeded so far the way it should have succeeded. We have to first ask that question. And we asked the same question to rooftop 10 years back when we entered that sector. And again, Vinu was alluding to a few things which you also mentioned. The client, the audience in this case is low income housing, or for example, MSMEs. And Labanya, of all the people, these people do not have credit history. Bankers don't give them loans. NBFCs give them loan at 14%, which then distort the business model of any technology, is either a rooftop or cooling solution. The second challenge also is demand aggregation. Like rooftop cooling is decentralized. There is no single place I can find in Rajasthan, Gujarat, where I can install thousands of hectares of cooling solutions, right? It has to be building based or CNI based, which are very decentralized. So we're talking about transaction cost and time. As an investor, as a banker, or even as a RESCO player, I will have to go to each building or each CNI section to look for cooling solutions. That's the reason RESCO has been struggling for some time. Again, Vinu, and you mentioned that targeting the low income houses. Vinu also mentioned a very interesting thing, where a technology or a sector where DISCOM is saving, and then can that saving be used for cooling solutions? Again, for example, EV charging at a decentralized level or rooftop as a decentralized level helps us in saving T&D cost. Can we use that savings for some of the cooling solutions? So I think we have to look in this paradigm why cooling has not succeeded, because of transaction cost and time, because of looking at the customer level, which is not having a very good credit history. And I will give you the solution which has worked for rooftop and I believe can work for cooling as well. Because 10 years back, when we started engaging in the rooftop sector, we faced exactly the same challenges what cooling is facing. What we did is we partnered with SBI for $1 billion program. As a first step, we started a technical assistance program on policy and regulatory level. We did not go for financing first. First couple of years, we were only looking at net metering regulation at the state level, so that we can synchronize all of them, so that investors are then feeling confident going at the state level. Then we got to the financing, and we brought the financing from 14% from NBFC to 8% with SBI. We targeted first the CNI sector, which is a low-hanging fruit in the decentralized, but then we moved on to residential, including low-income houses. And now we are talking about MSMEs as well. Again, looking at a credit enhancement for MSMEs, where if they go to the market, the World Bank guarantee will, at the last level, we will give comfort to the bankers. If everything fails, World Bank guarantee is standing behind you, we will give you. In the low-income houses, because they all need fans and also cooling solutions, they will pay. It's a perception issue. As you know very well, Lavanya, risk is both a perception and reality. when it comes to cooling on rooftop, it is more of a perception. So if you construct a risk mitigation framework, including or not including the World Bank guarantees, it gives comfort to both bankers and investors. If everything falls, the World Bank guarantee is standing behind that. That's what we did in rooftop. And finally, we brought in MEGA to refinance our own facility with SBI and brought in $200 million. So I think this, again, I'm not saying there should be a complete copy paste of this, but improvised version of things like this probably could work for cooling.
Yeah, thanks, Amit. And good to know that it's not like we need to create a financial instrument or financial mechanism all the time. I mean, it's not necessary that we need to be innovative, because this innovative financial mechanism or solutions people say all the time. So I remember that Warren Buffett, I think 2 decades back, he said that the only innovation in the financial sector happened in ATM. Okay, all other things are toxic in nature. So, okay, so I'll come to Dr. Barua. So, in Assam, what I read that there are a couple of schemes. Okay, it's although these schemes are for all kind of diseases, but these schemes are also going to help people who are facing health-related issues. So, I mean, here we are talking about only health. So, what are the sources of funding of these schemes? Do you think that we can focus only on heat? I can understand that Assam is not facing this kind of problems right now, but in the future, Assam is going to face. The same kind of models can be replicable in other states as well. Over to you, Dr. Barua.
Yeah, actually in Assam now, whatever things related with illness because of the weather extremities or climate change. So National Health Mission is handling all these issues. They are now the implementing agency for this action plan on human climate change and human health. And State Disaster Management Authority is also responsible for that. So that ASDAMA fund is there, NHM fund is there. There are a lot of convergence schemes are there. Then many of the diseases are covered by under Ayushman Bharat mission for the poor people up to ₹5 lakh, that all of you know. Now I think, as you were already mentioning, that the days are coming that a state like Assam is also going to face this kind of heat-related illness regularly. So I think a lot of preparedness is required. Therefore, I'm telling that some kind of in-depth study is required to assess the situation with some historic city data. And some most vulnerable places will be the cities, which are now growing very fast, creating a lot of urban heat islands. But I think this scenario is very nascent now. Whatever facilities we are having today is for public funding, we are doing. And now this stage is set to go forward. And another issue that what Mr. Amit Singh has already informed regarding the urban cooling and RESCO model. He rightly said that 10 years back, more than that, the rooftop solar has been started. In Assam, the Assam Energy Development Agency started the entire rooftop project, both in the RESCO and CAPEX model. And RESCO model certainly have some limitations, because if it is widely decentralized, it is very difficult for any public private funding to come. So I think this is an issue. Then, but in the urban areas, if we can explore properly, I think that RESCO model can still be there. Maybe we have to location-specific modeling has to be done. How we can invite the RESCO models, and that will be another area. If people would like to work with the Assam Energy Development Agency, being the state nodal agency of MNRE, will be looking forward for this kind of joint collaboration and how to make RESCO model successful in states like Assam and the northeastern region, because they are very critical area, very difficult to get so many things in one place, but still we can develop a good model. And wherever we have done RESCO model in rooftop solar, still going on. But if we go for a bigger picture, and now say PM Surya Ghar project is coming up, that is also, I think, the way it is going forward, the pace at which we should have been solarizing the rooftops, and it is not happening. What are the bottlenecks there? We have to see. Maybe some kind of awareness, sensitization is required. So this is a broader picture about the application of renewable energy in Assam. And that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Barua. So when we're talking about heat, Suranjali, it's more problematic urban areas because of the concrete jungle. So I mean, there is a large section of the society, particularly, I mean, Dr. Barua said that people who are working outside, the street vendors in particular, and the bus shelters, this thing we need to cool down the temperature. Otherwise, I mean, people who are waiting for bus for 5 minutes or 10 minutes is very difficult for them. The issue is that, I mean, as we know that city authorities, all the time they are facing funding crunching. Okay, so do you think that in that any way that funding can be available for city authorities so that they can come out with public solutions which are benefit to everybody, particularly construction workers, street vendors, people are just waiting in the bus stand, they can pick up the bus.
Yeah, Lavanya, I think what has also happened in the last few years in the climate space is to talk about that we don't only do a top-down approach, which is to say the central government will lay out a plan and then there will be funding, but also bottom-up approach. And in this context, a lot of people have started revisiting the relevance of urban local bodies, which are in charge of some of these facilities. Now, there are a myriad of issues around there which perhaps can be talked about both in terms of finance and coordination, which some of the states are already doing. So, for example, there will be cooling services which can be implemented at very small sort of local body level. The follow-on issue is that how do you coordinate it across local bodies, because sometimes they are delineated as very small pockets. So, you know, you could be building something which could be used by two local bodies. So how do they share their funds? I think a lot of the work on the Finance Commission is in fact related to this. So maybe this question needs to be raised on how much power do local bodies have on raising funding. So we've seen some examples of bond issuances, right? And this has happened because local bodies have cleaned up their accounts and they've become more accountable. But some of them have done it only because there was an imminent sort of possibility of raising funds, but not many still are in a disarray. So I think start at the point of identifying what are these cooling services and their costs, and whether local bodies can charge user fee for this. They cannot charge it from the vulnerable population. So do we want sort of a differential pricing mechanism which exists in electricity as well? Then again, on how do they raise funding? Will they get, so a lot of the state or the center level funds or schemes land up at the local bodies, but they have to go through an entire process. There's also an issue of utilization of funds. So I think a streamlining there and a conversation, a very important conversation at the Finance Commission level could be very useful in making sure that these services are made available. So I think it's possible, but these list of services, as well as defining the boundaries of local bodies and their funding, I think that's an important question to raise.
Yeah, thanks, Ranjali. You spoke about coordination, you spoke about defining the list of activities and defining the boundaries and the seriousness of it. Maybe it should be a part of Finance Commission discussion as well. Amit, I'll come back to you. So there is a cooling facility created by GCF and World Bank. This facility is for only developing countries. I understand that these institutions are created only for developing countries. Do you think that this kind of facility can be replicated by India? I'm not sure that India is a beneficiary of this financing facilities so far.
Yes, Lavanya. So for any work we do in India is with the permission of DEA. So any request where we start working has to be with Ministry of Finance and DEA. So yes, to be part of this facility, the request should come from DEA. So this is how the World Bank works in India. But like this cooling facility, we have several global initiatives on cooling and other technologies, of which India is part of, and those initiatives are moving forward as we discussed earlier. But Lebana, I also really like your last question, which also made me thinking that street vendors and people waiting for bus, what solutions are we thinking more from a technology point of view in terms of helping them? And I was thinking, and this is a common man's problem. And of course, I don't have solution, but I don't know, in the end, if you can ask the audience if they have some solution. What I was thinking, and again, I'm not an expert in this area, is at least bare minimum solutions, as Suranjali spoke from ULBs, municipalities could be safe drinking cold water. There are, but they are not enough. Shade for these people. But otherwise, I don't see massive cooling solutions like the water pumps, which we see in some restaurants. I don't see that as a sustainable solution. But there has to be some sustainable solutions for people on the ground who are facing these urban heat because of the reasons which they are not party to.
Okay, thanks, Amit. My last question to Dr. Barua. So, is there any incentives or any kind of expectation? Is it there in the call? Oh, okay. That's okay. I don't have any more questions. So, from participants, if you have any questions for the panel members, please ask. And if you have, like Amit said, that he has some questions to the participants as well, you can contribute. We have 5 to 10 minutes more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Meghaji wanted to respond to what Suranjali said, and then I will pass on the mic to the others.
Yeah, two things. One is response, and other is what you also said, any solution for the vendors or the construction workers. So for Seva, insurance was contribution of 3. One is our members, they first contribute, and through that we also brought contribution from one of the NGOs which is working in the climate space. So with that to support, we took the insurance. Our reinsurance are ICICI Lombard. So through that, we took the insurance. In terms of street vendors or the construction workers who are working outside, we did a research, and someone might have heard about with the Stanford University, how much is temperature when they are vending outside or working outside, and how much is temperature when they are inside their homes. So wet bulb temperature. And we found that the wet bulb temperature is higher. So of course we have to work upon where they are working, but together with that, we also need to see that how we can make their houses cooler. So we have the cooling roofs that we do, and we also have a ujasya, which is a small space for ventilation that we do. So they have a small houses in urban areas, very small, with the tin sheets. So how we can make more ventilable houses. So these are the two solutions, and the other for their workspace, we are working with the municipalities at how the vending spaces can be made more cooler, of course, through contribution of the vendors or the construction workers, together with the contribution of municipality. Thank you.
Thanks. I think.
So I'm a student and I've done more of the climate side. I don't know so much about the finance. So my question was more about how when the impacts of climate change are so focused in terms of mitigation and adaptation both, they're focused on areas like health and infrastructure. And a lot of these usually fall under public sector things like if you have to mitigate a risk, then the cooling stations fall onto the government. And the same time, the impacts are increasing. So it's a 23% from 10 years ago. So how can the private side of finance or a multilateral bank side of finance kind of fit into something which is so dynamic with a business model that will keep shifting because the rate and the rate of change both are ramping up?
With the multilateral banks.
Your question is very valid, and to some extent, I responded to this question in my remarks, where, as you rightly said, public sector has been responsible, especially for cooling solutions in the past, but that's not the way to go because public sector financing is limited. And the way urban heat is expanding, unless we bring the private sector in, there is no way out. But the future is looking bright. And the reason I say so, because if you look at solar and wind, and also if you look at electric vehicles, the financing is coming mostly from private sector now, right? Even if you look at electric vehicles, which is very recent phenomena, earlier we were only had public sector, but now only charging stations, even that are moving towards the private sector, right? So we have business models where if you see in renewable energy and transportation, where they are heavily focused on private sector. In cooling, what I can think of is like in the case of energy efficiency or in the case of cooling, if you can demarcate the amount of unit of power which is going in cooling with respect to what you're charging from the client, if you have a transparent phenomena where you can correlate these two things, then the client or the private sector should be ready to pay for the cooling sector instead of the public sector. It has worked to some extent in the case of energy efficiency, where this has happened with the RESCO model. It is also happening right now when the renewable energy integration and storage is coming. These were heavily, especially storage, heavily driven by public sector. But now I was informed actually the regulations are coming where you are able to monetize the battery storage. This word is very important. Only and only if the regulation and policy are there to monetize for what cooling is trying to do, then only private sector can come in. Historically, that has not been the case, but now we are moving toward that direction.
Just wanted to add here, for your understanding, people that don't buy cooling solutions, one of the reasons is that definitely upfront capital. And second is that you have to pay money every month, okay? Particularly for vulnerable people, you cannot pay 3,000 rupees per month to use an AC. So here the importance of energy efficiency comes into play. And I feel that once we improve the technology over a period of time and scale up the manufacturing by air conditioner penetration is very low in India. So, for example, if there is intervention from the government as well as multilateral institutions, as we scale up, we believe that the scale of the cost of these technologies like television sets can be reduced drastically, so that the upfront capital, the capital expenditure required upfront, can be reduced drastically in the future. That's one part. Second part is that can technology help us in improving energy efficiency instead of spending 3,000 rupees or 5,000 rupees per month to use the air conditioner, can it be cut down to 500 rupees or so that it can be affordable to vulnerable section. This is where the private sector can play a role, but at the same time, they need to see that what is the technological progress.
Can I just quickly, I'm just going, because you're a student, and I think your burning question was that there is private capital and then there's public capital, and public capital will go into specific activities which are aligned with social causes, and then why would private capital come in? I think a broad solution is that you put the wedge between private and public capital by raising the cost for private capital for operating in the old old school way of functioning. So you do carbon pricing, for example, and a lot of the efficiency measures actually came because we had not a very well functioning, but a sort of efficiency trading market. So perhaps that's a sort of esoteric way of looking of how you change incentives. Sorry.
Hi everyone, I'm Jharna, co-founder of NLog. And as Lavanya was asking the question, like whether there are technologies which can help in energy efficiency. So that's exactly what we are working on. My question is to Amit. Sir, can you please tell me, like when we talk about energy efficiency, so there has been these energy management solution for the bigger, larger infrastructure. So do you see any space where, where can be, how we can democratize the energy efficiency solutions for MSMEs and masses? Because as a technology company, we have built the solution. But when it is about implementing something at that scale, so what are some kind of support, or if there are already something which has been worked upon?
This is a very difficult question, and I was discussing this with actually Puneet is sitting over here in the morning. See, what you're asking is very valid. What you're asking is actually on the demand management side, where energy management system, or to some extent battery management systems, can play a role. The reason it has not played a role because these services, the company you are working in, has not been monetized so far, no? Because the users has not been charged for whatever reason. But the way we are moving ahead now, decentralized renewable energy is moving very fast. Energy efficiency is moving very fast. Time of day is coming up in many major cities. Today, tomorrow, it will also go to tier 2. These were some of the changes which we did not hear back 10 years back. Again, for example, Puneet informed me that we are looking at peak shaving in every municipality, this is just a starting, no? Peak shaving in some of the cities where they're aggregating demand from several players to supply power to do peak shaving for discoms. Why peak shaving? Because it's very expensive. That is where your company plays a role in energy management systems. But this is the future. We cannot keep on pumping solar and wind without thinking of EMS solutions, without thinking of energy efficiency at the local level, at the household level. We have done so far. We have gone for 200 gigawatt plus without thinking of these solutions, but it cannot move forward. That's the reason we are getting new regulations on the demand management side, both from CERC and looking at SCRCs at these levels to monetize some of these services. That's the reason now we are floating tenders for storage and for EMS solutions at the state level, at the transformer level, So in West, it has been happening all the time, right? You switch on your washing machine when solar is providing you electrons in the afternoon. It has not happened in our countries, but it is going to happen. When the sun shines at 12 noon, where you have 10 paisa of power, you are offloading it to merchant power. Imagine you're paying 7 rupee rent, but in afternoon you're getting 10 paisa power. This gap has to bridge, and this gap can be only bridged by using the energy management services.
So this. Sorry, my name is Urmi Goswami, and I'm from with the Economic Times. There's been much of the conversation has been about the need, the cost, how much of finance we need for cooling solutions or managing heat, and therefore the need for innovation, etc., etc. My question is kind of the step before, and that is a lot of times what we are seeing is either we are continuing our activities, whether it's building or creating assets in our old school ways, which means the need for cooling still remains as if heat stress was not happening. And that itself means what? I'm raising the cost or capital required for cooling and or thermal comfort or dealing with heat stress. And I'm wondering if there are signals from within the financial system, whether it's financial policy or otherwise, which can actually look at addressing at step one, how much cooling do we actually need? Do we really need that much cooling? And I'm wondering if that becomes a critical part. The other question, and I don't know if there is an answer for that, but as everybody is talking, I was thinking today when we talk about cooling, and at a very layperson level cooling I'm talking about, we see, though AC penetration is very low, we see people actually turn on their AC. But there is an external cost to that, not just power, etc. Is the heat you spew out. So basically, my private thermal comfort is creating a public discomfort. And I'm wondering again, how do we address those issues? Are there financial levers or policy levers, fiscal levers that actually address that? Because all we are doing is raising requirement. And I'm wondering if that's somewhere we should be looking at. Thanks.
1 minute. There's a linked question, so he wants to ask right after.
Thank you. I'm not from the climate finance sector either. I study climate adaptation from a social lens. And very similar question. Thank you for bringing that up. But in our literature, because these two words, climate adaptation and also cooling, came up a lot. In documents like the IPCC, there's a very careful distinction between the climate adaptation, coping, and maladaptation. And so my simple question would be, what is cooling then? What does it become? And how do you make the distinction when you're sort of talking about it? At what point does it become sort of maladaptive? And yesterday we heard a lot about not doing certain things which can actually reduce heat, like not cutting down trees, keeping mangroves alive. So how does that come into the financial imagination? And is it just about sort of making new things? Yeah.
No, if you are talking about any private financiers, they will be indifferent actually. So you burn coal or use renewable energy, it doesn't matter to them. So what matters to them is the risk or return. Okay, just you said that about let's say green building, for example, we keep on talking about green building is energy efficient in nature, so that there should be a premium for green building. So if there is a premium for green building, it means that commercial banks, they should be more comfortable in providing debt capital, okay, or home finance on green building. But unfortunately, that's not the story in the financial market, the real economy. Because for example, if somebody is going to buy a green building, so is the person willing to pay a premium for the green building? Okay, it's the real economy needs to be corrected themselves. They need to give a premium to the green building. So it is an incentive for the commercial bank. They can say that, okay, the value of the collateral is very high for green building. I can provide you capital, debt capital at a lower interest rate, so that the financial market operates very, very perfectly. If the real economy, like consumers could be commercial houses, consumers could be households. If they are not giving any premium, okay, it's an issue. It's an issue for the financiers, because financiers will only see what is the value of the asset. It's more or less. If it is less, they are not willing to give you a premium in terms of giving you a loan at a preferential rate. There are some evidence, particularly in Hong Kong and Singapore, I believe, that there is a premium for green building, and the financial instruments derived from green building are traded in the financial market at a premium. It means that it gives incentives to borrowers who are buying houses to invest in energy efficient technologies or buying green buildings which can reduce the energy consumption. Okay, there is an incentive because the real market is reacting. But in India, unfortunately, that's not the story, because what I heard actually, even if we have a green housing certificate or so, I heard somebody said that you just pay 5,000 of bribe, you will get green certificate. Okay, it's not giving a right signal. So the real economy needs to correct it themselves, then the financial sector will react.
Thanks, Lavanya. I think what I hear in Urmi's question and the other audience member is that there is a bit of a definitional haziness there. I was hiding behind the lack of definition of cooling so far, but I think what we need to do is we need to start at the level of what do we mean by activities that are aligned with our cooling aims to cool. So I think one of the things which I mentioned earlier on is that we were talking about MNREGA sort of schemes where you're already seeing infrastructure being defined, which is aligned, right? And you talked about very nicely about planting of more trees, increasing cover. And I think that's one of the things that is included in the list. Now, how do you link it back to the financial markets? I think it all goes back to our very favorite subject on taxonomy. And so India's already released a draft guidance. In a sense, it's out for public consultation. And I think this is a time to also reflect on these aspects to say that, okay, do I want to, as Urmi mentioned, so do I want to say that if I install some cooling to mitigate the effect of heat wave, would that count as an activity which is aligned with my aim, or is it going to actually emit a lot more and therefore we cannot count it as aligned with our goals, and so therefore it cannot get preferential rates or terms of funding. So I think it all goes back to definition. And Lavanya, maybe, I don't know, you can comment a little bit about whether you think putting this into the taxonomy's problem can help even on the private side.
Yeah, taxonomy will take a long time actually. Here we are talking about whether it is energy efficient or not. So even if European Union come out with something called technical screening criteria, and if you go to a commercial bank, and I don't think that any relationship manager at a commercial bank will go through the technical screening criteria and say that, okay, this project is a climate finance or climate finance taxonomy. It will be extremely difficult for any relationship manager. And the second part of taxonomy is that because energy efficiency technology is not constant, it will be evolved over a period of time. Like you said correctly, climate adaptation. For example, you are using AC and you are using the blanket as well as AC at the same time, and temperature is 20 degrees inside your home. I think that will be a climate adaptation. So that should be a definition, but I think definition only cannot help. Okay, definition can give you some kind of guideline or so, and if you follow the European Union kind of definition, and it's not going anywhere actually. Okay, the bankers are not very serious about that, to follow that definition blindly. Okay, definition, you need that so that you can differentiate between a good product, good climate finance product, or bad climate finance product, but it's not going to help you significantly. Again, it goes back to the consumer as well as producers. If you come out with the right standards, actually, that will help. For example, we have AC standards, okay, 5-star, 4-star, or 3-star, that can differentiate whether it is a mild climate adaptation or good climate adaptation. Any more questions?
Is there any more? I think we can back.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you,
very
Lavanya,
much.
and our sincere thanks to the speakers, both online and present, for this insightful session. I would now like to request Archana to please come on the stage and give away some mementos to the speaker. So, Archana, Lavanya, can we start?
Just for the photos, yeah.
Can I also request all the speakers and Archana to come up in front for a group photograph? So with that enriching discussion, we have now come to the end. Thank you all for your active participation across these 2 days. On behalf of Climate Trends, NDMA and NHRC, we thank you, our speakers, partners, and attendees. We have had some serious conversation around impacts of growing heat stress through lens of science, public health, infrastructure, and industry. It was also insightful to talk about resilience and adaptation policy today. And we have some really insightful discussions around very important word, finance, climate finance. I hope when you leave here from today, you are more informed, inspired to take action on heat resilience in India. I would now request everybody to please join us for lunch. Have a great afternoon.